Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. My name is Preston Jacobs. I live in Taiwan, and we are talking about Ice and Fire. Because why not? Why not, people? Why not? Today, let's begin talking about Moqorro and Marwyn. It's funny. If Marwyn is Moqorro, well, that's problematic. Yes! Well, Marwyn, yes, Marwyn is Marwyn in blackface. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't have the same implications in Westeros because they don't have a history of minstrel shows and stuff. So, and not to mention, they don't have a history of race-based slavery. So, but nonetheless, let's talk about whether this is even possible. The ship travel in Ice and Fire is fascinating because I don't know. George isn't 100% consistent. However, he's somewhat consistent, and so it's like good effort, especially for a writer in keeping this consistent, like having little consistencies. But first off, the thing to remember with ships is that there's kind of this beginning of things going nuts with the world and people traveling around, starting with Daenerys appearing at the docks in Karth. So we know that in A Clash of Kings, Daenerys kind of spontaneously, no one was expecting her to show up in Karth. I mean, unless you're kind of thinking that like Jorah's plan to go east was Illyrio's plan, but he was trying to get her to go to Asshai. So like them ending up in Karth is a little unusual. Additionally, Daenerys leaves. I mean, Illyrio finds out about all of this, and then Daenerys leaves. And her plan at this point, when leaving, is to go to Pentos. However, quite spontaneously, because of dreams, and granted, whatever dream sender would know that they were doing this, Daenerys makes a detour into Slaver's Bay and conquers Slaver's Bay, and then quite spontaneously decides to stay in Slaver's Bay and not go to Pentos, not go to Westeros, and stay put. And so the fact that this is like a fairly spontaneous thing is quite unusual because first off, like, we've got the Cinnamon Wind. I'm going to have this be CW. Okay. So the CW runs into Dany in Karth. However, they claim they're going to do a circuit of the Jade Sea first before heading home. Now, maybe they're lying. We don't know. But the Cinnamon Wind knows that Dany is there. And then all the rest kind of people in the docks and the warlocks and, of course, Euron. And we kind of know that Euron knows because he tells us flat out that he catches the warlocks, finds out about Dany. We hear about a Corsair king interested in stuff, and he heads back to the Iron Islands pretty fast with news of Dany. Now, this is all well and good. Now, the only thing that when you read A Storm of Swords, you have to remember that Dany's stories all take place at the very beginning of A Storm of Swords, and they're only sprinkled through the story for the reader's benefit of breaking up the narrative. That Daenerys' march from Astapor to Meereen takes just a matter of a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, while the rest of A Storm of Swords takes place over 4 months. So you have to, keep all this in mind, because remember, like, Balon dies in the middle of A Storm of Swords before the Red Wedding, and which means Euron is already back with news of Daenerys conquering Slaver's Bay. So, you got to keep all of this in mind, like timeline wise. Now, the weirdest freaking thing about this whole stuff is that for some reason, Doran Martell knows that Dany is in Slaver's Bay and staying in Slaver's Bay, or at least, heading back slowly, because he collects Quentyn from Ironwood. He goes all the way down to Planky Town with Cletus and company, and they set off before Oberyn dies and before Tywin dies. So Quentyn is off to go find Dany. How Doran Martell found out about all of this is a real mystery. It could be that the Cinnamon Wind lied about going to the Jade Sea, headed straight to Dorne and told Doran Martell. It could be that he had another spy that we don't know about. It could be that he had a glass candle. I lean towards the glass candle only because there's so much in the Arya Hotah thing about like setting him down by the setting sun and waiting until the sun sets and before he opens a letter and all this kind of stuff. So Quentyn goes off, but he gets stuck in Volantis and he's just stuck there for a while. Okay, so this is the state of the world. Now, we know that Marwyn, well, who should we go for first? Victarion? Yeah. So Euron comes down, starts harrying the Reach. And then in the Reach, he decides, again, quite spontaneously, and this is actually George's spontaneity too, because he originally planned for Euron to go. He has Vic head to Slaver's Bay. Okay. So Vic heads off to go get Dany's to go get Dany. And then we know that, well, actually even before this, Oberyn, Tywin all die, and Tyrion Tyrion gets out and ends up on a pole boat and is on the whatever. Heading down river. Heading down river. And then so news of the Ironborn. So while Vic is gone and he's sailing the seven seas, having a great time, singing shanties, Euron's crew starts harrying Old Town. And we know that during this period is when Samwell arrives and Marwyn leaves. So, now the time period of when this happens is actually when Sam shows up is actually pretty specific, because Cersei has not yet released the Red Wines from their obligation to take Dragonstone, or at least they haven't heard about it. So it's a very specific time. I think around Cersei 6-7 is when Marwyn leaves. Kind of sooner than you'd think, considering Sam was the last chapter in A Feast for Crows. That this happens, or at least the people haven't heard about the Red Wine Straits. But nonetheless, like Marwyn is off, and he's in the fastest ship, the Cinnamon Wind. Somehow this Cinnamon Wind made it all the way up to Braavos. Somehow they went all the way around the Jade Sea, went all the way up to Braavos, got Sam, came all the way to Old Town, and dropped off and took Marwyn. So we're back with the CW. So Vic gets into a big storm. Quentyn, he finds passage, ends up kind of in Astapor. Not kind of, but yes, he ends up in Astapor. Vic gets into a storm. Cinnamon Wind is behind. Tyrion coming down. And we know that Tyrion beats Victarion to Volantis, which is unusual, actually, that Tyrion gets down there so quick, because Victarion, I mean, Victarion, I guess, just hit a massive amount of storms. The fact that like Tyrion gets across the Narrow Sea, goes over land on a pole boat, slowly goes down a pole boat, and then makes it to Volantis before Victarion is pretty amazing. All things considered. But Victarion gets caught in these storms, so I guess the Cinnamon Wind could catch up. And then we kind of know that he picks up. Now, here's the weird thing, right? Tyrion beats Victarion to Volantis. However, Moqorro is with Tyrion first on the Stinky Steward, on the Selsori Quran, right? So Tyrion leaves with Moqorro. Victarion heads into Volantis and then heads out. So in order for... And then, of course, like around here, Tyrion gets in a storm. Moqorro gets dropped off, gets picked up by Victarion. You know, Tyrion makes it in. Daenerys goes off into the Dothraki Sea. And then we... So, in order for... I'm not saying that it can't be possible, but like in order for Moqorro to be Marwyn, the Cinnamon Wind would have to overtake Victarion, end up in Volantis first, and then Moqorro would be, you know, Marwyn transforms us into Moqorro, ends up on Tyrion's ship, and heads off. Which I don't really see the advantage to it. Like, I don't see the advantage to it. Like, why would he change ships? Why wouldn't he just take the Cinnamon Wind straight? Like, what was the planned advantage of getting off the Cinnamon Wind, the fastest ship in the world, getting on to Tyrion's ship just so he could have a conversation with Tyrion, getting into a storm, getting stuck in the water and nearly dying, getting picked up by Victarion. Like, if his plan were to embed himself with Victarion, just stay in Volantis and figure out a way to embed yourself with the Ironborn at that point, rather than the getting lost in the sea and everything. So going through this, you know, I'd always been quite open about the idea of Marwyn being Moqorro and them being the same. But now that you kind of play out like the ships, you realize how silly it is, right? Like, for some reason, while Victarion is here, the Cinnamon Wind makes it to Volantis first, waits for Tyrion. Tyrion comes down, gets on with Tyrion, switches ships, gets with Tyrion, switches ships again once there's the storm just to come in. It seems very, very weird and odd. I don't see why it would happen. Like, it seems a lot easier if you're Marwyn to pull some other scheme, to either head straight to Slaver's Bay because you're on the Cinnamon Wind, get in there before the blockade, you know, all sorts of things, or find some other way, chill in Volantis and find some other way to endear yourself with Vic. So yeah, guys, I mean, not that it's not possible. It's certainly logistically possible. However, it's kind of just it's kind of unlikely that Marwyn is Moqorro. Sorry, people. If you, in case you were shipping a Moqorro is Marwyn kind of narrative, but it just kind of doesn't make sense. Just kind of makes sense. But looking at all that, the more fascinating thing is Doran Martell. Like, what the hell? How did he know all that information? How did Quentin get out so easily? Okay. Where are we? Okay. Hello, hello. This is the first time I caught Preston live. Yeah, I just do crazy, crazy stuff, and then I edit it out for the replay, so you'll know, So Moqorro is Stone Snake. Also logistically possible. I mean, Stone Snake disappeared in Clash of Kings. He could be doing anything. He could be doing anything. Moqorro is a horse. Greetings from Itidakimasu from Japan. Itidakimasu. That actually means bon appetit. Let's see. Balon dies in the middle of the storm. Bruh, spoilers. Thank you, Carmine. Thank you. Melisandre's skin is actually black without the glamour. We actually don't know. We don't know what Mel looks like. I just think she looks like Mel. I like thinking that the magic isn't there, and that she just like has a bad memory. She's been a shadowbinder for years beyond she could remember or beyond count. Yeah, because she's got a bad memory and she can't count very well. Cinnamon Wind also has Aemon's corpse. Maybe he could use it to magic up a storm. Yeah, I mean, if that's actually a thing. The thing is, we don't, is it a thing to like take pickled Targaryen corpses and make them into storms? I mean, I understand that like they burned Alice or Florent and got good wind to go to the wall, but it's hard to say. Some people are asking about Wynn's stuff. Hopefully he's busy writing. The thing about George is, I mean, the only real comparison we have with him was on Dance before it. And with Dance, generally speaking, the more he updated, the more progress he was making, and the less he updated, the more he was stalled out. Now, that was 13, 14 years ago. So we're talking about the behavior of a man 14 years ago and comparing it to the behavior of a man now. The behavior of a man who is like starting out, just like busy with Game of Thrones going on the air, didn't have buckets of money and an empire to manage. And now a guy with buckets of money and an empire to manage. So it's like, maybe you can read into the same things, maybe you can't. It's hard to really tell, but in previously he when he made progress, he tells people that he makes progress, and when he doesn't, he keeps it to himself. Was Arya killing the Night's Watchman Darien too far? I felt she kind of went psycho for that murder for no real reason, though. I personally think that the killing of Darien is horribly unjust. That Darien, keep in mind that like Darien is a very good singer, and from what we can tell, pretty attractive, and he was sent to the Wall for supposedly raping the Golden Grove girl. Rowan. Mathis Rowan's daughter. And the thing is, he maintains that it was consensual sex. Now, we don't know, but it seems like it's probably was. I'm thinking that it was consensual sex. Like, we've just the fact that like we don't it's not like the daughter was. We don't hear anything about the daughter professing that like she was forced or anything like that, or how. So Darien is an innocent guy who is forced to join the Night's Watch. And so of course he's like looking for a good life and something better. And so he leaves the Night's Watch in order to try to become a singer in Bravos, which he looks like he's doing okay at, you know? And the thing is like Arya kills him because he's a deserter of the Night's Watch. And this is, of course, like this goes back to the beginning of the story where Ned unjustly executes Gared, like who was just scared. And even Gared, like Gared supposedly had a real crime at some point, unlike Darion, who's probably innocent. So Arya is psycho. Like she had no business in executing him. Like plus it's like it's not her place. Like she's no lord. She's not Lord of Winterfell. You know, like she doesn't even have that. She doesn't have that right or ability. She knows nothing about Darion's situation. You know, she just wanted to kill somebody that she thought was a jerk, and she was coming up with a twisted logic in her head. And this is one of the statements that George is making about morality and like what it is. Like people come up with their little schemes in their heads, and then they shift and waver in the wind to do what they want to do. And it's the most like nihilistic relativist like point of morality. And so it's like Arya was definitely wrong in what she did. She had no business doing that. It wasn't her place, and she was wrong because Darion was probably innocent, you know. She just did it because she didn't like the guy. And so it's I want to say that like it gets into like everything wrong with Arya's character and everything wrong with the nihilism of the Faceless Men is that they have no code. They have no code. It's worthless. Like, you know, even when you look at Jaqen H'ghar and his freaking death pays for life, but death pays for death. Like nothing they do makes sense. They're worthless. They're worthless. Like, but it's supposed to be this like, if we're comparing it to Jaime and Brienne's story, which is like figuring out morality and figuring out code for yourself, because you know, a relativistic morality is morally bankrupt, according to George R. R. Martin. But like, also objective morality is morally bankrupt, because what if the person you're following, the god, the king, wants you to do something horrible? You're just supposed to phone it in and do it, you know? So morality is difficult. You have to figure out what's right and wrong for yourself. And Arya doesn't do that. She lazily just does whatever she wants. She doesn't think about what's right and wrong. She doesn't make those hard decisions. Who will be the first point of view to kill in the fanfic? That is a hard question. You know, there's a debate in my mind on whether or not Barristan should live or die. I'm leaning towards Barristan living at least a little bit longer. I think that there's more fun tale for him to tell. So, I honestly like, honestly, if I'm looking at somebody that's like disposable, it might be Davos. But just because like, and you know, maybe somebody can convince me that I'm completely wrong and Davos like needs to live. But you know, I think Jon may not reappear again, but like Davos, you know, do we need his perspective on things to tell the story? We have so many points of view in the North already. So it's a lot of it has to do with like who is there to tell a story, you know. So that drives a lot of it, you know, that you need a person in a particular location to drive a story. So I don't know. I mean, after that, it's like, what do I kill Brienne? Jeez, do I kill Jaime? Jeez, you know, because that's at least with Jaime and Brienne, you have a redundant point of view. You know, so even with Barristan, to get him back, I mean, I might remove him as a point of view. To get him back, he would have to either stick with, Barristan or stick with Quentin or something. Would you need his point of view again? Um, but we'll see. It'll just on like who is essential. Davos looks like he's on like closest on the chopping block. Most annoying misconception. Can't stand how many think Gared deserted through the Black Gate when he most likely went through the Gorge. So what we're talking about here is you're talking so there's a few ways around the wall. And so these are kind of the possibilities. So here's the wall. And so say you're trying to get around the wall. You've got a few options. You can either climb over the wall, which is you can go through one of the gates. Castle Black, the Shadow Tower, East Watch by the Sea. But Gared is part of the Night's Watch. Would they really let like some random guy like walk through? Doesn't sound like it. That option's off the table. He could climb the wall. However, we don't hear about him having climbing equipment, things like that. So we don't know if he does that. I mean, we don't really ever hear about how Osha gets over the wall either. Then there's the Black Gate at the Night Fort, which is a possibility. And then there's this gorge around. He could get on a boat, go around East Watch, or he could go on this side. You probably wouldn't want to climb over the Frost Fangs to the Bay of Ice. That's kind of... But there is this little gorge here they call the Bridge of Skulls. And you can cross over that way. Now, some might say, well, isn't that a long way to isn't that a long way west? And it's like, well, not really, because this is the wall. He crosses over here and he makes it all the way down to Winterfell before he gets caught. Well, the Black Gate's here and takes the King's Road. So it's kind of the same. Because once you get kind of towards Winterfell, it's all kind of due south. And, for people that are like, isn't this a long trip? It's not really that long. like a lot of these distances, when you get to the wall area, which what we're forgetting about is that like the wall compared to the rest of the north is a relatively small thing. So, let's get to the, so, I think it's only about keep in mind this trip from Winterfell to the wall is about 3 weeks by horse. That's how long it takes Jon and Tyrion to do it in a Game of Thrones. So this distance is a good 3 weeks, which means that like walking from East Watch, Castle Black, Shadow Tower, it's like 3 days by horse from East Watch to Castle Black, and maybe 5 days, 6 days from Castle Black to Shadow Tower. Does Gared have a horse? I think he probably... I mean, I understand in the show you see like Will just walking, so we all have this idea that he doesn't have a horse. But Gared, he might have a horse with him. So it's relatively easy for him to just go along the wall and then disappear into the Bridge of Skulls Canyon area and cross through and then head down to Winterfell. Like timeline wise, it makes minimal difference whether he did that or the Black Gate. However, one could argue that going along the wall or passing by the Shadow Tower, you're gonna be Night's Watch people are there looking for people trying to cross through, while at the Night Fort they're not. So I mean, I don't know if it's like a misconception where like because it's a problem either way, right? Like, why does Gared know about the Black Gate? Is that a mysterious, weird thing? I mean, he's been in the Night's Watch, a while. Could he know about the Black Gate? I don't know, But at the same time, going through the canyon at the Bridge of Skulls, like, that's also like dangerous because somebody might spot him. Like maybe he knows like, there's a shift change at 3 a.m. and I can go in the middle of the night, and wildlings do it all the time, or maybe he's a really good climber, So I don't know if it's a misconception, but it's just that like we don't know. I think going through the bridge, I probably put him in a coin flip. Like it doesn't necessarily make a what he I don't know if it's like one way or the other, or even if George even thought about it. But I don't know. But for my own like fan misconceptions, I'm trying to think like what thing like most people believe in, and I mean, I guess I get most frustrated when people when I hear a bad argument repeated over and over again, and I'm just like, how do you even think that's a good argument? Like when an example is, for a long time people are like, oh, R plus L equals J must be true because Jon looks like Arya and Arya looks like Lyanna, and therefore like Jon would look like Lyanna, and therefore like Jon is the son of Lyanna. And it's like, that doesn't work. This isn't like math with equal signs where you say like X equals 5, which equals Y, they all equal 5. No, like if something looks similar to something else and something looks similar to something else, that tells you nothing about the first and last thing. So like, I look like my mother, I look like my father. My father and mother do not look alike. You can't use that logic. Like, like a yellow triangle looks like a yellow circle. A yellow circle looks like a black circle. A yellow triangle does not look like a black circle. Like, so, and like I try to explain this to like people, and like those kinds of misconceptions like just annoy me when somebody like blanketly passes on like a bad idea without analyzing it or thinking about it for themselves. Like Lemon Gate must be wrong because trees are found in the courtyards of the mighty. And it's like, that has nothing to do with lemon trees. Like, it's just nothing this isn't Tree Gate. This is Lemon Gate. Like when I hear that one a lot, and it just like annoys me. And I'm just like, no one cares about the trees in the courtyards of the mighty. Okay. Like that has nothing to do with it. We're talking about citrus, like, but yeah, those are the sorts of things that frustrate me the most, rather than like something where it's just like, it's kind of a mystery, Will the Hound show up in the fanfic, and who sees him? I don't know. There's no plans for the Hound, like the real Hound, Sandor Clegane, showing up right now. We'll see where the story goes. The Hound's helmet and the fake Hound is going to play a very big role going forward. I know that like that's going to be a big part of Jaime and Brienne when they meet Lady Stoneheart and Lemon Cloak is wearing that helmet. Like that's going to be a big thing, and it's a continuing. like the helmet and the confusion regarding that helmet is just an ongoing thing in the story that's going to continue on. That helmet is just going to continue on playing a role. Keep in mind that like at the Red Wedding, for example, like everyone saw that helm and thought the Hound was Robb Stark transformed into a werewolf, direwolf, going around savaging people. So there's this confusion constantly about that helm. And then he loses the helm and it gets picked up by Rorg. And then Rorg is doing stuff and everybody thinks it's the Hound. And then Lemoncloak gets it and Brienne thinks it's the Hound. It's just gonna keep going on. The helm is going nowhere. The Hound, we'll see. We'll see where it ends up. It has to be a very good reason for him to move out of the Quiet Isle, because he has a somewhat nice ending right now. Like I don't necessarily see any narrative reason to pull the Hound out of where he is. Him ending up on the Quiet Isle and helping people and relaxing and living in peace. It's not a bad ending for the Hound. It's not bad. It's not bad. How does the time traveling Bran impact the theories on the murdering Bran series? Could some other agent have wanted Bran dead? So obviously, there's a lot of agents who could want Bran dead. Obviously, if in my Killing Bran series, we talk about Mance Rayder wanting to mercy kill somebody because that's part of wildling culture, as we find out in A Dance with Dragons with Val, that he would see it as a mercy. All the characters talk about it hey, maybe he could be killed as a mercy. In fact, Joffrey supposedly in Tyrion's head tries to kill him as a mercy, right? That he thought he would be doing his daddy's business, mercy killing. So it could be that. And then it could be Littlefinger, Littlefinger wanting to create chaos with between the Starks and the Lannisters, hiring someone to kill Bran. But then we have to step back and say, well, if this entire story is set in motion by time traveling Bran trying to push events in a certain way to change the timeline, he's probably responsible for, ultimately, time traveling Bran is responsible on a level before. So somehow time traveling Bran has to influence Littlefinger or Mance into doing what they're doing. Which if does time traveling Bran have the ability to visit dreams, things like that? It seems like he does. It seems like he does. Obviously he visits Jon in the Frostfangs through ghosts and stuff. But you could say, well, but Jon's already telepathic. Okay. But can there be another method for him to communicate with Littlefinger or Mance Rayder in order to try to send them that message? Just say, give Mance the bad idea of yeah, I need to attend a wedding. I need to spend months of my life leaving my army and my planning of my plan of uniting the North and going to war. I need to abandon that for a few months, thank you everybody, so I could sneak into Winterfell to chill, to watch. I don't know, he wanted to see Benjen for some reason, and he wanted to look at the king. It's a pretty crazy story. So well, who gave him that kind of idea? Could you imagine Mance Rayder, he wakes up one day with his host and he's like, Tormund, I need to go to a wedding. And he'd be like, what? But we're searching for the horn, and the others. And yeah, I need to by myself. I need to travel for months, climb the wall, travel all the way to Winterfell, pretend to be a singer, like incorporate myself into the into them and like sneak in so I can like why? So yeah, so I can like look at Robert and Benjen. Like you just be like, what? Like imagine if like any other military commander did that. Like imagine Napoleon like randomly did that. Alexander like randomly did that at some point in the like, you know what, guys? I need to go. I gotta go to a wedding, guys. I gotta last live stream you suggested that dating Japanese women isn't cracked up isn't all it's cracked up to be, but didn't elaborate. How so? I've been wondering all week. Look, this doesn't go for obviously anybody in any culture because you have diversity of behavior everywhere. However, stereotypically, and at least some of my experience in Japan was that the Japanese women that I dated were tended to be a little more subservient. They would be kind of thing where, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? Wherever you want to go. What do you want to do? Oh, whatever you want to do. Like willing to do anything, like kind of just deferring to you on everything. Which was and the woman that I dated was very, very sweet and very, very intelligent, but at the same time, like it was very frustrating to like not have somebody ever like think for herself or like challenge me or like kind of have these like be forthcoming with thoughts or just interject in a conversation, things like that. Of course, like it's there's over 100 million people in Japan. Like you're gonna have different people, but this tended to be like this came up in this discussion of whether or not like what kind of mate does one want, because a lot of these chauvinists online talk about how you need to have like your woman a little subservient and obeying you and things like that, and it's it's not really the best, like there was just something I don't know. I mean, I found it grating and annoying to always be the one, like, you kind of feel like you're alone. You're the only one making a decision. You're the only one like driving conversation. There's nothing exciting or challenging or empathizing, like, in the situation. So it was, I mean, granted, like, she was a very sweet, very beautiful, very intelligent person. But it was just, she just didn't have the kind of, I don't know, like, independence or like confidence or to like, to stand up for herself or like, that kind of situation. So it's, it was, as a 23-year-old kid, like, it was, that was just my experience at the time. So I don't think like these stories about like needing some sort of like 1950s style woman who will like obey you. There's nothing very fun about that. There's nothing like, I don't know why anyone would want that. Like because at that point you're just alone, and this is someone you can't relate to. Like this is not somebody that's like walking beside you in life, like empathizing with you through your experiences. So that's all. I don't know. It was It was certainly a time. Certainly a time. Um, are you going to have Sweet Robin legitimize and marry Maya Stone in the fanfic? That had not crossed my mind. I mean, I think in Sweet Robin's mind, at this moment, he wants to legitimize Elaine and marry Elaine. And so I think, without a doubt, the legitimization of Elaine is coming. But I hadn't considered the legitimization of Maya, which is a fascinating concept. I mean, if Sweet Robin wants to create trouble, you know, he can certainly create trouble by legitimizing Maya. I don't know what Maya would, would she just feel like she's being used at that point? Because that's clever. I haven't, because everybody talks about legitimization of Edric, and in the show, legitimization of Gendry. Like, everybody thinks about that, but no one ever talks about legitimization of Maya. Maya Baratheon, like, causing, because Maya is, I mean, did he ever? Yeah, he recognized. Well, wasn't there something about whether he recognized Maya or not? Oh yeah, he would visit. He would visit her often, so he recognized it. So, and she's got the tapestries. That's a good idea. I think that might be something that might happen. Like, why not? Like, I mean, if you're Littlefinger and you want to create some chaos, legitimize Maya, and then just to sort of like create some rumblings, because now the Stormlands is completely. I'm not saying it'll be very successful. You're in the Stormlands, and the Golden Company has pretty dominant control over everything. But to all of a sudden legitimize Maya, does that? I'm trying to think. Hold on. Daughter comes before an uncle, so you're ruining Stannis's claim. You're ruining Stannis' claim immediately because over that, because Maya would come before Stannis at that point. Huh. All right, I do like that. I don't know about Sweet Robin marrying her, but because Sweet Robin, I mean, realistically, if I'm thinking about Sweet Robin's like trajectory, he needs to be an eligible bachelor for Dany as well. Just because that's just hilarious. Like, you could imagine this scene in A Dream of Spring where Dany arrives and they're like, you have to meet with like your suitors, and it's Sweet Robin, and like they're telling her like, sorry, like you're going to have to marry like this little boy because he has the best army and has like controls half of the kingdom, and like like the absolute like just ridiculousness of like Dany being like, oh God, I've got to marry Sweet Robin. Do I like museums? Which is your favorite and why? I do like museums. I'll tell you some of the ones that I've famous. Taiwan's National Museum is probably one of the best museums I've ever been to in my life. It is there's good museums and bad museums. So like you gotta like, when I lived in China, they have a bunch of museums, but like you go to them, they're all the same. It's like there's a whole floor for iron pots, and there's a whole floor for like scrolls, and there's a whole floor for it'll be like one calligraphy, one, and when I say like there's like mountain scenes, and then there's a whole floor for calligraphy, and a whole floor for iron pots, and a whole floor for like iron coins, and they're all the same. Every single one's the same. And in Taiwan, and the reason is because when the nationalists left Taiwan, they took all of the good art and they brought it to Taiwan. They stole it all. Well, I don't know, steal, but like they took it. Steal might be a might be a strong word for it. But when you go to the Taiwan Museum, and they're all like different and fascinating and colorful and unique, they have these like crazy puzzle boxes that fit together. Like the emperors of China used to get gifts from the Westerners, but they would never want to throw them away, but they were like all of these like useless trinkets that they didn't know what to do anything with. Like, you know, you've got a comb and a brush and a mirror and a snuff bottle and all these like random like gifts. So you're like, like create a fascinating puzzle box that like the wood is shaped around all of these items perfectly, and then we can fit it together in a fun little puzzle. And then like it can be in the room, and when people come over and they say, oh, you want to see what the Westerners have given us, they open up this puzzle box which comes together in all these interesting fashions and stuff like that. I think I had a really fun time at the Bilbao Guggenheim Museum. I think the Guggenheims are really fun. I am a fan of some modern art, which is interesting stuff sometimes. But I don't know. That's some good ones. I'm trying to think of I mean, living in DC, like I like the Air and Space Museum a lot. Like obviously I've been to that a bunch, but you know, there's good ones and there's boring ones, you know. Some ones I didn't like, you know, the Prado in Spain, which is just kind of this oil painting after oil painting. I like just diversity in what I'm seeing. We've all heard of Bolton, but what about Preston? The theory is George R. R. Martin died years ago, but transferred his consciousness into the body of a famous A Song of Ice and Fire fan YouTuber who is now slowly releasing the Winds of Winter chapter by chapter. Yeah, I suppose there's always different ways people tried to like tease me on my name when I was young. And when I was young, Lee press-on nails were on, like the ads were on TV all the time. And if you're too young, maybe you don't remember Lee press-on nails, but they were this you know, they're this little thing where you put a little sticker on your nail, and then you pop the little nail on top, and then that was the way it was. So I remember people being like, "Oh, Lee pressed on nails," you know. That was like their way to tease me. You know. But it's I don't know, not too many other ways people were able to make fun of my name, but that was always one. But yeah, as George R. R. Martin's consciousness into my body. What's really weird is like a couple weeks ago, George posted like reposting a video of him making a speech at a college or something, or a book convention in like 2006. And what struck me about it was how fast he talked. And now, like, if you see him in interviews, you know, he gets a question and he kind of sits there and he thinks for a while. And then he's like, well, and then kind of explains it. But there was just the speed issue. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's going to happen to all of us, but I don't know if I have his consciousness in me. Traveling to Tokyo and then Kyoto, Osaka next March. Any suggestions on what to do and see? So generally speaking, so let's see. In between Tokyo and Osaka, Kyoto is Fuji Yoshida. You can go see, obviously, Mount Fuji, and you can climb Mount Fuji if you like. It's a pain, but it's doable. Like it's a hard climb, but it's a doable climb. So, I mean, I'd recommend climbing Mount Fuji. The thing about surprisingly, there's not as many, like, Tokyo and Osaka have surprisingly not as many like tourist sites as you'd think. You know, like you can walk around a bit and have fun walking around and going out and going to restaurants and stuff, but it's not like there's that many sites. And the sites they have, which are temples and shit, are all the same. They're all the same, and every single one looks the same. And so, what I recommend is to try to not see as many temples as like a book or a tour guide or someone else might recommend, because you will get templed out. And Kyoto is the city that has them all, and there are like it's like there's 50 temples when you go to Kyoto, and all the Japanese tourists, they have this like checklist because they want to go see all 50. But the thing is, 45 of them look exactly the same. There's 5 of them that are super cool. Like, don't get me wrong. There's like 5 temples in Kyoto that are super, super cool. Like one that's completely golden and one on the lake. Like, it's just awesome. You should definitely see those 5. But there are like 45 temples that you should not bother seeing. But everybody else, and when you like other Japanese people are going to be like, oh, like what temples did you see? And when you like put out like that you saw 5 temples and had a nice relaxing day in Kyoto, they're like, oh, how did you only saw 5 temples? Like, oh, but there's like 50 temples. What? So that is the thing. My suggestion on it is to relax, try not to see as much as like you can kind of see. I think there's a fish market in Tokyo that you can go see that has like, if you go early in the morning, you can get like sushi right off the ship. Some of it, like when they cut it open, the fish meat is still moving. That's pretty awesome. Like definitely do a carousel sushi at some point, or not necessarily a carousel, but one where there's just like dudes making it, everybody's screaming at the dude, you know, be like, domo, and they're like, domo, and they like give you some sushi and bring you a plate. You got to do that. I had a very weird kind of unique experience because I was friends with this Japanese rapper, and I would go see like these crazy rap shows and like break dancing, and it was the oddest time. It was so odd. But there's a lot of weird stuff like that in Japan that if you can seek it out and find it, it's really kind of cool and curious. Like what they have, like, because it's a city of 25 million people, and it's just it's just odd the things you'll find in a city that big. Like once like a friend of mine brought me to a bar where it was a club that only Africans went to and Japanese women that were interested in meeting Africans. And we're like, me and my friend are sitting in this place, and they're playing like African music, and you're just like, oh, this is really crazy weird, but it's a city of 25 million people, so you're gonna like find that kind of stuff. Or like there punk shows and hip hop shows and all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's all there and it's all weird. But like I say, like I think Kyoto is worth seeing, like those 5 temples. I think Fuji is worth seeing, but like, but try to just like enjoy yourself rather than killing yourself and trying to see everything, because it's kind of all the same. Don't you get frustrated when people say that Quentin is definitely dead? I do get frustrated with that because it's pretty obvious to me that it's left on a cliffhanger, and so that that there's clearly an out. Like it's clearly ambiguous. You don't cut off action off. So I guess that does frustrate me when people say that Quentin is definitely dead. They're like, he's dead, he's crispy, he's toast, and you're like, what are you basing that on? Like, it's unrecognizable body and the action cut off twice. Like, it's like he might be dead, he might be alive. As I say, like Schrodinger's Quentin is really the honest situation. But Let's see. Um, Series end with the blood sacrifice to the others restored. I don't think it'll be anything like that. I mean, I think it'll be a more um, trippy consciousness, situation going on at the end. Something to do with like green dreams and the Isle of Faces and the werewoods and stuff like that. I don't know if there's like any need, like physical need. Like I do wonder if blood sacrifice does anything. Like what the blood does. Is it just bringing consciousnesses into the werewood? So like what like, would the blood sacrifice be doing? Like I don't think blood sacrifice creates magic. I think if there's anything to do with blood sacrifice, it has to do with like the essence of consciousness like flowing and coming in and joining something. But I don't know if like I understand that like Melisandre likes burning people and there's these blood sacrifices to create magic or whatever, but I don't it just I don't I'd be too caught up in the mechanics. Like how does a like sacrificing people with blood like achieve something? Like what is the specific mechanics? Like what is happening to like human consciousness, like telepathically? Like how is this going on in order to save the world? You know. Thoughts on Dick Cheney, Halliburton, and Iraq? Um, hmm. I mean, keep in mind that so Halliburton is not called Halliburton. Halliburton changed their name about 20 years ago to something called KBR. Um, and KBR is now no longer the contractor in either Iraq and was or Afghanistan. They switched. So, but the thing is like when one contractor like disappears and another contractor appears, it's kind of the same people because the company is gone, but then everybody's like been fired and they just get rehired by the new company. And a lot of times the same workers like come over and do stuff. So there's now like a contractor called PAE that does a lot of this stuff. And so, it's when we talk about like, was there a big conspiracy for Dick Cheney, who used to be part of Halliburton, to push forward like his company so he could like make money personally? I don't know if it's so much a conspiracy in the sense that like he is running a company and his bottom line is like increasing. I think it's more that like when you're in government and you're surrounded by nothing but contractors and you're in that game for a long time and you want generally that industry to advance and your friends to advance and everyone to advance and stuff like that. And that's just kind of like the when all you have is a hammer, everything you see is a nail kind of idea, that kind of like pushed it forward. That you've got a lot of interests that want to see government contracts get more money, but now, and there was a lot of different people and different reasons for Iraq. I mean, there were the Wolfowitz people, the Paul Wolfowitz people, who really thought that they could remake the Middle East. There was Bush, who wanted to get revenge on the guy who tried to kill his dad, and yeah, Cheney, who is deeply connected to all of these people who want government contracts to be their industry going forward. But I don't know if it's necessarily the conspiracy of like, I used to be part of this company and my bottom line will like advance. Now, keep in mind that because of this, like this is the reason like Halliburton and KBR like are gone because the name became kind of villainized, and so they moved on. But again, it's the same industry and the same people. They just moved to a different company. Um, so it's I mean, I understand that like people want to have all of these like master plan stuff for real life where it all makes sense, you know. Wake up everybody. This, you know, Russell Brand, Joe Rogan kind of conspiracy kind of ideas. But like in truth, the world is messy and bureaucratic and people do things for many reasons. And you have people all doing stuff that for different reasons that kind of go in one general direction. And it was a horrible thing, Iraq. Horrible. But um you know, I don't know how much it was some sort of like, and keep in mind, Dick Cheney is a freaking horrible human being. Don't get me wrong, but like, you know, I don't know if it's like master conspiracy kind of situation, you know. Speaking of logic, do you believe deductive or inductive reasoning is more sound, and why? Or does it depend on the situation? You and Cameron are the best. Let's see here. So inductive reasoning is when you okay, inductive reasoning is probably the logically unsound method, but it's also the one we kind of use on a day-to-day basis, right? Like inductive reasoning is like um you know, you go out in the world and you find that you pick up let's say you pick up you're trying to see if you like ham sandwiches. So you go to Joe's Deli and you eat a ham sandwich and it's horrible. And then you go to Todd's Deli and you eat a ham sandwich and it's horrible. And after that, you're like, well, I've seen a pattern. Ham sandwiches are horrible. I don't like ham sandwiches. Now, logically speaking, it's like there's millions of ham sandwiches and you've tried two. And like you're trying to tell me that you dislike all ham sandwiches because you've eaten two ham sandwiches. But that's how we do. That's how we do the world. You know, obviously I told a very anecdotal, like subjective story about living in Japan earlier. You know, no logic to it. You could but that's how you kind of like you kind of that's the situation you kind of deal with in life. That's how we kind of do it. Now, with deductive reasoning, you kind of have the situation where you have a theory, a hypothesis, you collect data, you analyze data, you reject it, and things like that. Even now, that's obviously a much better situation. In fact, I would say I would actually even claim that the best situation is that you don't have a pre-existing theory. That if you're able to collect data, analyze data, and then come to a conclusion, I think it's probably even the best situation where you're not biased by a hypothesis to begin with. The problem with these hypotheses is that people, once you have a hypothesis, people start having bias in their data collection to either support or reject that hypothesis. So I mean, really, like the best situation is like you have no pre-existing biases. You collect data in a very scientific fashion, and then you analyze the data, and based on that data, you come to a conclusion. Would probably be the best situation. But that's really hard. Those situations are few and far between to do these things, to kind of be a disinterested party, to come in and like comment on something that you just do not care about. Because why would you be studying it if you didn't care about it? You know, like I have no interest in say, like I have no knowledge or interest or in like who's the best maxi pad maker. But I suppose because I have no interest in it or experience in it or whatever, I can go in and like properly like look at absorbing rates or whatever and like, you know, do data and then like try to have the best conclusion at the end or something. But everybody would be like, why was he doing that? You know? So it's very, very hard. But yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on the situation. But you know, how we deal in life, like we can't go out and collect all of the data. That's the problem. You know, we can't go and find every single person and create a good statistical sample. It's funny, even the people that do stats, like every time I see like somebody like try to create a situation where they're doing a scientific study, somebody always comes in and be like, well, you didn't do it logically sound. And it gets to the point where there has never been a study that that doesn't have holes in it at some point because, you know, either based on the data collection or the methods or whatever. I recently read an article that the Michelson Morley's experiment where they like determined that there was no ether. Like even though their conclusion is most definitely correct that there's no ether, that actually the methods they used were like wrong, and that like it's, you know, like it doesn't actually prove it. I mean, just odd stuff. Like, what are you gonna do? Um, mm, mm, mm. Do you think that Gorn's Way, the urban underground path between the wall, will show up in the Windsor Dream? Could Bran return south that way? I definitely think Gorn's Way should return. Like, I understand that like a lot of people think that the wall coming down is this Chekhov's gun that needs to happen. But you know, why couldn't the others just like go through the Gorn's Way? You know, or I mean, or go through the Bridge of Skulls. You know, there's no need for the wall to come down. Um, and so it's I definitely for a long time were like, yeah, Gorn's Way seems like a logical thing that like, you know, maybe Stannis finally wins the North, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere the dead start coming out of these tunnels, you know, and kill him, you know, and you're like, oh crap, didn't see that one coming. So I think that's definitely a possibility. It might even appear in the fanfic eventually. But I think George, you know, as the gardener, has his various methods because there's a million methods that to get around the wall. You know, John dreams about the others climbing up the wall and going over. You can go under it. You can break it down. You can go around it. You know, you can go through gates. So there's a lot of different ways, but yeah, I definitely think Gorn's Way, someone is going to use it at some point in the future. Whether it be it's, you know, others just using it would seem easier. Um, Bran traveling, just trying to think like logistically, like could Bran like could Bran and Mira travel under those tunnels in the dark? Like who would guide, like how would they see? Would they run out of torches? How would they know the way? Um well with the others it's just like, well, you've got this mass. They can go in every direction, figure out the right way. And you know, or you know, it's the other, you don't necessarily even need to explain it. I'm just logistically thinking of like how would Bran utilize the tunnels, you know? Would Cold Hands know the way, but you know, would they just be in the dark? Why didn't they use it on the way there? Um, who are Connington's friends in Westeros? So it's not Connington's friends. It's Peake's friends. The friends in the Reach line. Um, Well, there might be. So Laswell Peak rapped his knuckles on the table. Even after a century, some of us have friends in the Reach. And then, then again, later, the Half-Maester says we have potential friends and allies at every hand. So, so it's more that Laswell Peak, has friends in the Reach, which, obviously when it's Peak, you kind of think that it's going to be some secret Blackfires. But yeah, it's, Connington has, everybody can be Connington's friends. There's a million reasons for someone to join Connington's cause, Like, yes, there's Blackfire reasons, but there's also like, I liked Rhaegar. I liked the Targaryens, so I'm going to support Jon Con. There's also just, I hate the Lannisters, or I hate the Tyrells, or this guy has the power, so I'm going to support the guy who has power. So I think when people talk about friends in the Reach, and I know you didn't just ask about Westeros, but like, generally speaking, like, I think we tend to think like Blackfires, opportunists, Targaryen loyalists, people like that, which is why, like, I kind of like point out that, okay, Bonifer Hasty is of course a possibility, because the Hasties were Blackfire supporters. The Red Wines, we don't know their background, but possibly. The Hightowers were kind of half on the fence. But then you've got, a whole bunch of others, like the people that were exiled themselves, like the Merryweathers, that were treated poorly. But then, you've got a whole bunch of others that could be, anybody that used to be a Targaryen loyalist or a Blackfire supporter or an opportunist could be there. This is a tough one. A tough question. Do you enjoy the sitcom Frasier? You strike me as someone who would enjoy Frasier. Are you excited about the continuation? I have mixed feelings about Frasier. So on the one hand, like, I've seen a bunch of episodes of Frasier, and there are some episodes of Frasier where, yeah, I laughed my ass off. I did. There are some very funny episodes of Frasier. At the same time, I hated the character of Frasier, and I hated him because, I hated him because he's smarter than the writers are, so they weren't able to make him actually act the way smart people act. And this gets into Big Bang Theory too a little bit, is that people don't really understand how smart people act, or how rich people act, or how like artistic people act, or whatever. There's this idea that because Frasier is smart, he would be interested in fancy furniture, for example, or wearing 3-piece suits and being like, and the finer things. Okay. But the thing is like, why are those two things together? Like, why is being smart connected to being into the finer things? I know a lot of people that are into the finer things that are idiots. And I know lots of people that are smart who sit around in t-shirts and are slobs. In fact, like, usually because they're so focused on being smart, they're not paying attention to anything else. They don't have the time or effort or well beyond like thinking about those, like, these petty indulgences, as like, but while like Frasier's sitting around talking about like fine wine, or as like, the antique furniture that he bought. I never thought that like that went with like the intelligence, because the guy has a PhD MD, right? And he's supposedly like a master in his field. And yet he's also like weirdly like materialistic, which is just very odd, having those two things together. And I always thought that was is that what is it honestly what the writers think smart people act like? Because they're smart people. Like, didn't they all go to school? Like, or do they think the audience thinks that's what smart people do? This is the same thing with like Big Bang Theory. Like, do they think theoretical physicists, because smart people are dorks, and because the people are into comic books are dorks, that somehow they'd be the same? That like theoretical physicists would be into comic books because that's what dorks are into, you know? Like, that's what nerds are into. Like, you know, to not really get the difference between like a nerd and a nerd. You know, the fact that like Revenge of the Nerds, like even as a concept, like broke down the different nerds and had like what, like they had the slob, they had the Poindexter, you know, they had the rejected person of each type. They had a gay character, a little kid, like, you know, the computer guy. You know, that movie understood that there was diversity in it. So Frasier always frustrated me in that respect. Now, like I say, there were some really funny episodes. I think I remember one where just, I don't know, I laughed my ass off so much, where he was like he's trying to date a Jewish girl or something, and for some reason Miles comes over dressed as Jesus because he was going to be in some nativity play, and he like shoves the Christmas tree into the bathroom with Niles, and they're trying to hide the fact that like they were celebrating Christmas. Like, that was really funny. That was really funny to me, you know, like, but yeah, I never understood like the snobbery thing, because it also doesn't fit Frasier's character from Cheers, where he's hanging out in a bar, like a Boston bar, drinking with a postman and a like a guy who hates his wife. Like, it's just, so I don't know. I think it's you know, trying to disguise like certain things as wit, which got me about Frasier. Now on the new Frasier show, I don't know. I suppose, I think what a lot of people liked about Frasier was Niles, right? And so it'll be tough to see where that goes without that character. It does have I watched a few episodes of this show called Working Moms, so it has Mean Nanny, and she was also in a season of the she was the girlfriend that dies at the beginning of The Boys, and she was in a season of The Expanse. But I think she's in it. This character. This is mean Nanny. She's got a very distinctive look. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But I always had that like weird annoyance about that, because like when I think of smart people, I think of like a freaking David Foster Wallace, like tortured slob, you know. It's very rare that I find people that are super smart that are into the finer things, like because people that are into the finer things, there's a level of pretension to that, you know. They're trying to appear smarter and more sophisticated than they are, while someone who's really, really smart, like, if they're worried about that insecurity, it has to do with their craft and their field, and or talking about it, and they're not worried about these other veneers. But I don't know. Whoa. Moving to Japan to find a subservient wife, getting weird looks from people, and hearing slurs in a language you don't understand. That happens. People definitely like, there's definitely like, it's 20 city of 25 million people. You definitely run into assholes who are like, look at the freaking foreigner, you know, or like made comments to my girlfriend at the time that were like, oh yeah, you're with a foreigner, great, you know, you think you're something. There's definitely those people. But look, it's not a bad move, right? Because like I think also the stereotype is that Japanese guys, are like a lot of them are very sexist as well, and so even at your American level or whatever where you're from, your American level of sexism, you might be less sexist than local Japanese guys. So it might be a win-win situation. I mean, honestly speaking, if you're looking for someone more subservient and they're looking for someone less demanding, you may meet in the middle, you know. Do you think George comes up with several reasons for the way different things are and keeps them all plausible as long as he can, as long as possible? The answer will never be the first or second thing you think of. It'll always be the clever. I think he definitely keeps open so much. Like, he likes to keep his options open. He doesn't want to paint himself into corners. So he's just, and then later when he gives the answer, everybody's like, "Oh, George planned this from the beginning." No, he didn't. He just had those options. But so he's going to keep it open as long as possible. And it's funny that even after he supposedly like solves something, he even kind of keeps it open, just to keep people guessing about it. I'm just thinking about like Joffrey's murder and Bran's murder and stuff like that, and how there's just so many little hints that something, could be happening that's different. Like even if he even like in an interview said, "I'm going to resolve the Bran murder, the Bran attempted murder thing," and then brings up more stuff in A Dance with Dragons related to it. So, I think it's just a function of he doesn't want to be, he's fearing that he's going to be painted into a corner, and he just wants to keep it open. But it's not always the clever thing though. Like at this point, I mean, because at this point, even though I have these videos on how Joffrey sending the cat's paw is a ridiculous idea, and it should be like either Mance or Littlefinger. There's still a piece of me that's like, well, maybe he really did want Joffrey to be the person, because he had two characters come to that conclusion, and it's a really dumb conclusion. Like, it's outrageously dumb. It was not the clever thing. It was just the subverting expectations thing. Like, it was Joffrey. Like, how? That's just dumb. It makes no sense at all. Like, and I think most fans accept that it makes no sense at all. Even if they accept that it's true, they accept that it makes no sense at all. So I don't know if it's always the clever one. I think he goes, he tries to surprise people. He does go for the realism. He goes for the harsh. He goes for the harsh. He goes for the realistic. And he goes for the subverting expectations. But I don't know if it's always the clever. Do you dislike Milton Friedman and his econ ideas? I don't know. I mean, it's all part. I don't dislike it. It's all part of the big mass of what we kind of know and learn and balance it. What I dislike is when somebody takes a position and goes to the extreme with it and like thinks about it as the answer in isolation while dismissing all of the other things. So you'll find neoclassical economists. I mean, Milton Friedman wasn't a neoclassical, but he kind of like paved the way as a monetarist. He like paved the way for a lot of different things. And but when people kind of say like, this is the one reason why something happens, and you're like, well, there's all these other things to think about. Economics is very, very messy, and there's a million reasons for everything to occur. And so I think I just dislike anytime someone takes a school of thought to the extreme and doesn't consider all of the other factors, so that's really the problem of it all. It's not really Milton Friedman's fault, though. He was, his ideas have a place with along with everybody else's. Rational expectations have a place. His monetary policies have a place. Keynesian, neo-Keynesian stuff has a place. New business cycle has a place, and then game theory has a place, and then today is like psychology. Everything's about psychology now in economics. Like it has its place. So you have to consider all of these things together to really get a full picture. But once you start considering them all together, everything gets very confusing, and you don't really know how anything happens. In general, and this goes for every field and every scientific field, you're going to make mistakes if you only consider one thing or only a few things and you extrapolate too far. So that's the real problem, is do not extrapolate. Like I watched a JJ McCullough video about a month ago, where they asked a bunch of scientists what the world was going to look like in the year 2020. And the year was 1980 when they did it. And of course, their predictions are laughable, because the things that are important in 1980 are not the things that are important in 2020. Like they talk about like the world running out of oil, or the Cold War situations, and what that's going to look like, and you'll have some or like the space race was on, so everyone's talking about like colonizing the moon and Mars and stuff, and like, yeah, in 1980, based on those trends, like one can understand why they get to those points, but they just extrapolated wrong. They extrapolated too far, and they didn't think about other things that came along in the meantime. Like none of them predicted the internet, none of them predicted 9/11. So like you don't, so like anything when you take it too far and you stop thinking about everything else. This is why like I talk about like the heat death of the universe. It's just a foolish thing to even attempt to do that. Like to even attempt to talk about that. Like you're extrapolating so far based on so little information that like, what are you doing? Like, it's like the same with economics. Like anytime you're going to take something, you're going to be like, I'm just going to assume that everyone's rational all the time, and then like build my models. You're always going to extrapolate to something bad. So I don't have a problem with Milton Friedman and his ideas. What I have a problem with is taking his things in isolation and extrapolating them without thinking about everything else, and holding also understanding that there's a bunch of things you don't know that are going to come about, so new theory I had this morning. Benjen, a captive of the others, and had one of the Craster's wives thrown in with him. Babies. It's true. If they're trying to get Stark genes, that would be something. Yeah, you could get special working genes. Oh man. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know how they're keeping him alive. Now, not that that's not a good idea, it is. But then it's like, how do we bring the characters to discover that? How does Bran, like, why would the others bring Benjen back into the story? How would they find, how would Bran find out about it and stop it and like realize it? Would he float in a raven to get there? Would Summer the direwolf go? Because it's like we've got very little time left in the story. How are we going to get that far to where Benjen could be? It's certainly an intriguing thought. I just don't know how anyone would find out about it. and how it could be brought back in. I mean, that's an idea. It's an idea. If the Eyrie represents Lysa's womb, is the giant lance supposed to represent Littlefinger? His house sigil is a giant, and he impregnated her. Huh. Well, that's all. That's all. That is. That is a kind of interesting. I hadn't thought of that. So what Jesse's talking about here is that, the George is really ridiculous when he starts talking about the Eyrie, because the Eyrie is supposed to be a vagina. Okay, so people come through the bloody gate, menstruation and everything, and get up to the Eyrie, which is impregnable. Impregnable. Like, you can't pregnate it. You can't. And then there's a moon door, and Lysa gets ejected from it to go splat on the ground. And so it's this like weird idea that like it's all talking about Lysa's like abortion, forced abortion, Lysa becoming this abortion in a sense herself, because she's just like dropped out of the moon door to go splat bloody. It's a weird George R. Martin-y kind of thing about the Eyrie, but like there is a lot of sex imagery about, yes, they're going up the uterus and coming back down. It's freaking weird, right? Gates of the moon, stuff like this. So yeah, that's all there. The moon door, moon tea, moon blood, everything. Now, I'm not saying there's like a logic to everything, that this represents this and this represents this, and it's a perfect kind of thing. It's not like the sky cell is an ovary and all. Not everything is going to make sense like this, but like, yes, all of this kind of stuff is in there. There's definitely this imagery. So the giant's lance is, yes, when you say the giant's lance, it's supposed to be a dick, obviously. To balance. So it's the mountain of the moon. It's the tallest peak. There's by the way, it's like not only is the mountain, the giant's lance, supposed to be a dick, there's like falling water coming out of it, like he's either peeing or coming, that's coming from the top. It's all there. George did this, but is it specifically supposed to be Littlefinger's dick? Because it's true that Littlefinger's sigil was the head of the Titan of Braavos, and then it gets changed to a mockingbird. I'm trying to, it could be. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else like to it, like where it is and what it is. Littlefinger. Yeah, I don't know. Snowfall berries, the peak of the giant's lance. I mean, they cook a lemon cake in the shape of the giant's lance, 12 feet tall. I don't know. I suppose. But I mean, it is what you think it could be. I don't know if there's anything specific about Littlefinger. Maybe it could be, but I mean, obviously the giant's lance is supposed to be a dick. Could it be Littlefinger's dick? I don't know. I guess. I don't know if there's anything to say it is or isn't. But if we, I think one could probably make an argument that it was Littlefinger's dick. But. Okay. Oh no. The fish market is now like too popular. You've got to get, this is what we were talking about going to Japan. The fish market is now too popular and they closed it off. Now you need to sign up and get advanced tickets. How you fall in love with a shrine maiden and to fulfill the local prophecy if you don't get all 50. It is true that like they talk about like you have that when you go to Kyoto you're supposed to go to all 50 and like some sort of weird things for like happy marriages and whatever, and like prosperity and stuff like that, which I always thought was like these weird contradiction, because on the one hand, like so much of Buddhism and Shintoism is about the world being an illusion and like not needing to indulge in having more, but there's so much also like consumerism and consumerist culture there too. So it all seems to contradict a bit, but it's I mean the same with in Taiwan here, there's a lot of Buddhism, but but at the same time like there's still a lot of consumerism. How many Dunk and Egg books do you think George could realistically finish if he gave up all the work? Bummer, we're all mortal. Thanks, PJ and Carmine. I do think that I think George could probably if you were like, I think you could probably finish like one a year or one every 2 years if he were just working on Dunk and Egg. I'm trying to think like how many pages is like Mystery Night? It's okay. Oh, Mystery Night is the Mystery Night is 150 pages. It's longer than I thought. What's the Sworn Sword? $152. Oof. And the Hedge Knight, 160. Ugh. Okay, I'm gonna walk back that. I do not think he could write one a year. Okay, because 100, when we talk about 150 pages, we're talking like that's 200 manuscript pages, a lot of good time and quality stuff. So I think he could write one every 2 years if he just focused on Dunk and Egg stories. So if he stopped doing all of that, he could. He's what, 70? His birthday's coming up soon, right? September 20th. George R. R. Martin's birthday is like is Wednesday, guys. It's Wednesday. You just think about that. He's going to be 75 on Wednesday. So, yeah, if he stopped everything else and he just focused on Dunk and Egg, I think you could probably squeak out 3 more Dunk and Egg stories before he was like 81 years old. And then a severe slowdown, and maybe he could get out like, assuming he's going to make it to like 85, which is a big assumption. But like, say he's going to make it to 85. His I think he could probably squeak out 4 Dunk and Egg stories. Like, it would be possible for him to like finish up the Dunk and Egg story, going all the way to Lord Commander, right? Because we kind of know that there's the She-Wolves of Winterfell, and then there's something else called the Village Hero. that he had an idea for, which takes place in the Riverlands. And then we kind of know he's going to make it a Lord Commander. So you try to have like at least 3 more Dunk and Egg stories. But yeah, that's it. But yeah, each one's 150 pages. They're longer than I thought. I thought they were shorter. But man, 200 manuscript pages each. Yeah, that's one every 2 years. One every 2 years, I think. What do you think the White Walkers want? I've never heard a satisfying theory because why now? What triggered them to come south at this moment? I think that. So my theory was always that the White Walkers wanted just survival, and that they were looking for genetic material to produce more of themselves, and that that the problem is that they'd gotten to something called a bottleneck. I want to come up get the right thing. It's like, yeah, we talk about a genetic bottleneck. So in get this a little bit. So generally speaking, most animals have a pretty good ability to increase their population, because the thing that keeps their population stable is the fact that there are other predators, there's not enough food, there's disease, that kind of stuff, right? So that generally speaking, if you actually like say you had a population of dolphins, you kill off half. Over time, naturally, you take humans out of this picture, those dolphins would recover because you killed off half, but now the fish that the dolphins eat, there's more of them, so that the next generation of dolphins now have more and they can recover and go back. But the dolphins in general have an ability to have lots of kids and increase their population. But it's more that the resources are the limiting factor. But it's not so bad if you kill off half, because now there's more resources and they can just return. Now, there is this problem, is that if you get too few of a population, something else occurs. So say like a human being, for example, in their life can have probably like a human woman can probably have like 14 kids, in her life. Okay. You start her out at 14 years old and she makes it to 35 or whatever. She's having a kid every couple of years. She can have up to like 14 kids. However, if there's not enough genetic diversity in your population pool, you start getting more miscarriages. You start getting less fertilization. And so now she's not having 14 kids in her lifetime. She's having 9. And she's having 5. And then you get to a point where he's only having 2 or 3. And so once you kind of that's what we call the bottleneck. So there's no way to actually increase the population. They're just hovering because there's not enough genetic diversity in the pool. And then they're on their way to extinction. That is now, George R. R. Martin has written about the bottleneck in other stories. Okay, like Dark Where the Tunnels. This is the problem in Dark Where the Tunnels, is you have there's a population on the moon and there's a population on Earth. And there's a population bottleneck. Their population is just not going up because there's not enough genetic diversity. And so if the two civilizations got together, you double the genetic diversity and there would be no problem. Human society is saved. But It's George R. R. Martin. You know, so I think that that's kind of what's going on with. I mean, that was my theory that was going on with the others in the first place. That they were just looking for more genetic material, but and then you get this idea that Craster has just given him a bunch of inbred babies. Now, there's a downside to this. Is that theory is that George really believed that, like, well, he originally called the others Neverborn. That this idea that they were always just taken from Craster or sacrificed babies or whatever. But you know, that takes away the bottleneck theory a bit, which was my original idea, that the others just wanted more genetic material. So if they're always just taking babies, and that there's no breeding amongst themselves, like it's just men, then you know it's probably they just want men to increase keep their population going, and that once you kill off Craster, well, now they got to go get babies somewhere. Mance is taking all of the wildlings south, and Craster is not giving them others anymore. Like, they got to do something. Like, the others are in a situation where they need to go south just to increase their population. Like, there's no hope for them anymore, right? Like, once the wildlings go south, there's just not, and Craster's Keep is kind of destroyed. I mean, granted, there's the mutineers are still there with Craster's wives, but it does seem like a big threat. So it could just be that they want a flow of babies to keep their population going. But finished Foundation season 2. It was Game of Thrones season 1 level of good. Wow. Each episode was better than the last. Don't worry about rereading the books first. Half is original anyway, and just enjoy it. Season 1 half sucks though. Yeah, you know, Carmine's actually been watching Foundation and has been trying to get me to watch it, but I have to torrent it essentially if I want to watch it. But people say it's really good. Yeah. I've seen it on many lists of the best. What will Euron do in Old Town? I think he's getting visions from the others about Sam's horn, which he will blow on the tower to make the comet return. I mean, there's a lot of things in Old Town that Euron could go for. He could go for the books at the Citadel. He could go for the glass candle. He could be trying to get that horn, but does he know about the horn? The horn is interesting. You know, we haven't really heard about it too much. You know, it does seem like some sort of Chekhov's gun. But we'll see. But there's a lot of things, and he can do a lot of things at once. He doesn't need to do one thing, you know. But I don't know if the Ironborn really have the power to conquer the city. It may be that they're going to be doing raids and stuff like this in order to, and so which is probably a good thing. It'll leave some time for Sam to be at that glass candle a couple more times before it's stripped from him. But yeah, he should be interested in the dragon books. He should be interested in maybe a glass candle if it's there. If he doesn't already have a glass candle, maybe he wants another glass candle. I don't know. But I mean, it kind of does seem that, you know, if he's Earthon Nightwalker, maybe he already has a glass candle. So maybe he just needs those books. And like Sam is all fearful that they're coming for the glass candle, and they don't care. They want to get the books. Mel's receiving visions of the others in her dreams. Who do you think is sending those? I mean, I think it's time-traveling Bran. I think we're led to believe that it's Bloodraven. But I think it's time-traveling Bran in the end. The question is like, you know, is it the same mechanism to send things through flames as it is through the werewood net? I mean, Bloodraven does say that, like, over time, he won't even need the net, and there's like talk of going into the earth and the stone and like other elements being used besides the wood of the werewood. For example, the cave in the Stormlands that Arianne finds has stone faces there. So maybe can they do stuff without trees? Can they do stuff with stone and rock, moving beyond the werewood, and just kind of existing, in the air. Varamir Sixskins was in the air for a moment, without any connection through the werewood. True Detective seasons 1 thoughts. I only watched the first few episodes. I thought it was good, but I never finished it, unfortunately. But we'll see on that. I wish I had more to say on it, because people say it was very good, but I guess I don't know why I never finished it. I don't know why. I'm sorry that I if Victarion does Chekhov's bacon dragon, then what? So this idea is that Chekhov's bacon is if you guys are familiar with my channel, that like I firmly believe that Victarion is going to capture a dragon with Chekhov's bacon. And Chekhov's bacon is essentially they spent all of this time picking up boars and pigs on the Isle of Cedars, and that these holds are filled with pork, and that once you start getting a few fires and everything going on those ships during the battle, the smell of bacon will enter the air, and one dragon will find it irresistible and go munching and chowing down on that bacon. And then while it is full and docile, he will be captured somehow with grappling hooks. We saw grappling hooks being used by Victarion in the sample chapter and such. So once he has this dragon, what's he going to do? Well, I had various ideas, but essentially, like, if he takes a road home, maybe goes through the Summer Isles or something, and takes a break and learns how to like mount this dragon and ride this dragon like Nettles, he could come back to Westeros a dragon rider. Because if you think about it in that sense, like say you're Victarion and you have very little value of your own life, but you also know that you've got this dragon, you've captured a dragon, that you have to learn how to ride that thing. You do. You're not going to hand that thing over to Victarion, to Euron. And would Victarion even allow one of his underlings to ride it versus himself? So I kind of think that, like, at least my plan for the fanfic is that he stops in the Summer Islands and he mounts the dragon himself, and he learns to ride it himself. And then when he makes it to Westeros, he has a bargaining chip and to deal with Dany and Euron and all sorts of people. That'll be that. That would be some interesting stuff. But he does seem, the Ironborn do seem kind of messy. Like, how do they fit into the Dance with Dragons? Well, how do you have a 3-way war? Like, what do you do with this dragon? If Dany is going to battle Aegon, and there's going to be dragon on dragon battle, what do you do with this third one? What's it all about? And if does it just exist to hand over to the others? Why would Victarion go north? What is he up to? Does he go back to the Iron Islands for a second Kingsmoot? Does Asha convince him to go to the north to deal with the others? Could that be the dragon that ends up in the others' hands as a white dragon? I don't know. But what am I doing here? What's going on? How did I shrink? Let's not shrink that. Jeez. Okay. Bitcoin. For your cycle, having is in 7 months. Um, Bitcoin is gambling, right? It's nothing more than gambling. It has no value by itself. Like, it's none. I never understood it. I mean, so when you talk to these when you talk to these people that have Bitcoin, and keep in mind that like compared to where it started, like Bitcoin is. Let me get. I don't need this. Let's see here. So keep in mind that like from the here's Bitcoin value for a second. So you can kind of see that like it's just kind of it's going up a little bit, but it's down from where it was. This is where it kind of been starting. You know, that's overall it's a very impressive growth over time. Like don't get me wrong, but it's fundamentally still gambling. The so people talk about, oh, well, the great thing about Bitcoin is that you're removing this middleman, right? That you and like normally when you make a transaction with a with a merchant, you have a bank of some sort in between. Like someone's dealing with your credit card, someone's taking a cut. Visa, whoever is taking whatever their 1-2% cut. Bank is somehow, having a cut in there. And that, but with Bitcoin, you get that efficiency, that 1-2% is no longer taken. It's a direct transaction between you and the party. The thing is, for me, yeah, that seems like a really fucking good bargain. 1-2% for like security. Like, you know what happens when there's a fraudulent transaction with my credit card? I don't have to pay. Either the bank eats it or they track down the person that did it, and it's refunded, and I don't have to pay. Like, that's incredible. That's fantastic. That is a fantastic service. And plus the convenience of being able to just have a credit card in my pocket and like walking places and like pay for stuff, and like, you know what? Well worth it. Well worth it. It's like, for me, it's like, wow, like this is a piece of capitalism that seems to really function really well for me. I like it. I like my credit cards. I like my banks. I like the security that they provide me. I love the fact that like if somebody steals my shit, I don't have to pay. Like, man, what a great service. Well earned. Well earned, Bank of America. Well earned. There's various things that like I hated Bank of America for. Remember back like 20 years ago when they were charging ATM fees up the wazoo everywhere, stuff like that. Random fees. But like when it comes to like me buying stuff and that like 1-2%, like don't mind it. Do not mind it. Think it's great. So when the like Bitcoin and whatever are like trying to promote themselves as like, oh, you get to save that 1-2%, but you don't get any of the stuff that comes with it. Like you don't get any of that security. I'm just like, I do not understand the appeal. So, and I don't think most people do understand the appeal. Like, why would I want to have an unsecured private transaction with someone else? Like, I'm not a drug dealer. Like what am I doing? I'm not buying anything nefarious. I don't need anonymity. Like there's just, I don't get it. So it seems like a useless product to me. Bitcoin fundamentally seems like a very useless product, which means it's all speculation. It's all gambling. It's something based on nothing. It's a value based on nothing. And so I would never, ever, ever, get in it. Like, it's not something for me. There's, it could literally like tomorrow, it could disappear as an industry, like, and the world would go on. That's the thing is like, if you invest in Apple, right? You know that tomorrow Apple cannot disappear. We're all like bound to iPhones and computers. You have to have it. You invest in Chiquita bananas. You know that people eat bananas. Like Bitcoin could disappear tomorrow and no one would care. I mean, besides the people that invested in it. Like the world would keep running smoothly. I mean, maybe drug dealers would have to figure out some other stuff, but like it could disappear tomorrow. And they're like, and they have add no value to the world. None. So that's why I'm like, do not invest in that. Like it's a useless product. Why have a cat's paw? Why have a cat's paw at all? He bemoans Catelyn's character forcing her to King's Landing. The murder attempt is just one more motivation for stuff that's already going to happen in King's Landing, regardless and not required. Why have the cat's paw at all? Like, here's the thing: is the cat's paw dagger situation does motivate Ned into. It's the fundamental thing that like drives his paranoia against the Starks. Like it's the fundamental thing. Like when Littlefinger says to him at the end, like, why not make peace with the Starks? He puts the dagger on the table and he's like, this is why. So the cat's paw murder is essential for Ned's coup. So in that sense, like it gives Littlefinger really good motivation, or time traveling Bran beyond that, a really good motivation for everything. I mean, you're right that like maybe, I mean, Ned would have probably gone south anyway, you know, but would he have that same level of hatred and paranoia against the Lannisters, you know? You know, would the mountains, the killing of Sir Hugh be enough? You know, would the bastardy rumor, like, would he have pursued it so hard? Would he have really, you know, done his coup in the end without the dagger? You know, we don't know, but certainly it's like a definite thing with the dagger. So, and even in a sense of like creating more chaos, in a Mance sense, it's there too. But you know, it plays into Littlefinger's hand the most. Like Littlefinger's the one like making up lies about the dagger. He's the one like trying to convince and drive Ned over the edge with the dagger. It plays into the Littlefinger story the most, which is why, you know, logically speaking, it seems like it's Littlefinger's like thing. What if LML is right, but the second moon was a ecological engineering core Death Star like craft that got destroyed and rained down, causing the long night? That I see a little. I actually, I mean, it's funny that like we're given these two options. So what Kyle is talking about is LML. David Lightbringer has a theory that the story with and correct me if I'm getting something wrong, but essentially the story with Jeekwe is somewhat correct, that there were two moons, and that the Jeekwe story is that there was a second moon and it cracked open and dragons spewed out, you know. And he was saying is he's saying that there's that's somewhat correct, and that the moon did break up, and as it entered Earth's orbit, these various meteorites struck the ground, creating a lot of damage, including the breaking of the Arm of Dorne, and perhaps like a nuclear winter, creating long night and things like this. So you can explain a lot of, you know, tumultuous situations on Earth due to meteorites, you know, coming down from this destroyed moon. And you know, that's, you know, sure, yeah, I would say that like specifically with the Armored Dorn that we don't need that because the Ice Age could have just ended. You know, that's what happened on our planet. Because the time period of the Armored Dorn breaking is the exact same time period as the Bering Strait breaking in our world. So you just need an end of an Ice Age to like cause that eventual flooding. Like we don't need the Children of the Forest breaking an arm. We don't need a meteorite. You know, it can just happen. And so when, you know, I tend to be in a position where it's like when something isn't needed and there's like a natural explanation for it, like why take the additional step with something. But now you're saying is that like, what if it's not a second moon, but more like an ecological engineering core Death Star like craft? So what he's talking about here is that in the Thousand Worlds, specifically Tough Voyaging, the human society had a genetic engineering crew called the Ecological Engineers who would go around in these massive seed ships, and they could do anything with these ships. They could create animals, create plagues, just do biowarfare up the wazoo in order to win the war against the Harangans. And in fact, the Tough Voyaging begins with an ecological engineering seed ship in orbit of a planet. And every cycle, like it kind of like rains down plagues upon this planet because of its proximity and sending things down. And so, you know, in a similar idea to what George did with Tough Voyaging, you could have like one of those big seed ships like explode and bring down like all sorts of problems on the planet in the same respect, you know. And that would all be, you know, obviously like George would be all in George's like wheelhouse of like what he writes about. I know like these things sound so crazy when you like speak them out loud, but these are all things George's done. So it's like not that crazy. So, you know, like I don't even say that like, oh, like LML's theory is like out there. It's not. It's like a completely reasonable theory on what George would put in a story, you know, compared to what he's done in the past. And yeah, like one of those moons actually being a metaphor for an ecological engineering core seed ship, like bringing down some sort of like weird problems. Yeah, that's completely like in George's wheelhouse, completely and utterly. Like it's, yeah. So it's, yeah, those are all possibilities. Well, you know, I just tend to think like, you know, my big thought though is that the Long Night just seems like a nuclear winter to me, you know, a 30-year winter. It's kind of, you know, so why not have it be a nuclear winter, where some nuclear weapon went off somewhere from some previous generations, like old nuclear weapon, kind of like in, I mean, people kind of believe this with Hardhome, right? That they found some old nuclear weapon and it just went off. Like one, you know, bigger nuclear war or something happened where there's previous generation had nukes. Why does the Thread Crow ask Bran for corn? This is so in the original Game of Thrones, when we're talking, this is the Bran 3 Game of Thrones dream. The Three-Eyed Crow says to it, he says, help me, say, got any corn? Bran reached down in his pocket as the darkness spun dizzily around him. When he pulled his hand out, golden kernels slid from beneath his fingers into the air, and they fell with him. Now, obviously, like in a literary sense, we're supposed to like connect the corn with like Mormont's raven and stuff like that. So he might be saying it because time traveling Bran is also controlling Mormont's Raven, and we're supposed to be making that connection. I mean, obviously, we're supposed to be thinking about that or wondering about it. Like Mormont's Raven says corn, Bran's Vision Bird said corn. Could as their connection? So it could be that he's inhabiting different kind of things. But of course, and Bran did bring corn with him, doesn't he? He brings corn normally when he goes like climbing. In order to, I forget his reasons. But this is good that you're bringing this up, because I do think it's important. So like the crows circle the tower, seemingly wanting corn, but we also know that like Bloodraven watches Bran somehow when he falls. I imagine time traveling Bran would be watching him through these, but they're looking for corn. But the idea of like, what does corn represent, and like how is it helpful for Bran to think about corn in the future? Because he used to go up there, climb the tower, and feed corn to the crows. Trying to think like, because now I'm in my head, I'm thinking about his escape from the pit, from the sinkhole or whatever, like, or him climbing, and like if he needs to, like, what would the corn do? Because I have to say, corn disappears from the story after a Game of Thrones for Bran. He does not think about corn once after a Game of Thrones. He thinks about corn in Game of Thrones, about like having it for the crows, and then he's asked about the corn in the dream. So now I'm thinking like, what, he's got to, maybe the corn is going to remind him of something. Because he needs to have someone, he needs somebody to help him out of that tower. But like, are they, pieces of corn tossed through time to like lure people to the right place, something like that. I mean, that's like just what I'm coming up with on the top of my head. I mean, obviously, like, George is just doing it to try and make us connected to Mormont's Raven. But like, is there more? Like, corn lures the birds, it brings the birds. It's a lure of some sort. Is Bran going to be luring people in and affecting change in the timeline with little bits of corn, little here and there or something? And maybe have to include something like that in the fanfic. But it's a good thing to bring up, because I don't know why anyone would be like, yeah, what, you got any corn? I mean, the corn's golden. Are we supposed to think about the golden man? I don't know. It's all these sorts of things, huh? Okay. The others are shadow babies, described and affect things similarly. Ancient castles are magic, blocking them are never born. I mean, you're right in that everything's telepathic, right? Things being animated through telepathy. In that sense, they're all the same, whether it be shadow babies or I mean, wolves or others. You kind of have this, or specifically the whites. You kind of have this idea that they're being animated with telepathy and telekinesis. That that they seem to be working in a kind of hive mind pack at the Fist of the First Men. You know, we all kind of accept, even in the show, we accept that like the others telepathically telekinetically animate the others, the whites. But the weird thing with shadow babies is the shadow babies, you know, are they born? You know, the one that kills Renly, we don't see where it comes from, and the one that is birthed from Melisandre underneath Storm's End, we never see it do its action, so we don't know if it's even the thing that kills Courtney Penrose. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, there seems to be like telepathy and telekinetics kind of thing, but here's something being born, something being never born. I don't know. I mean, George throws around all of this imagery because he thinks it's like weird and creepy. Like one could be like, how does it all relate? Is it connected to Lysa's abortion? You know, like is it connected to the Eyrie? You know, like how is Shadow Babies connected to Lysa? Like is Lysa falling out the moon door the same as the Shadow Baby in the underneath Storm's End? You know, at some point George just throws out stuff like, yeah, you know, talking about stuff like this is weird and creepy and stuff, but could the others themselves be shadow babies? I don't know. You know, I don't know if like the other, like the White Walkers themselves are actually like animated by people. Favorite Chekhov's gun is Aemon in the cask of wine. Will Dany drink him? Will Victarion, Euron? Someone can resurrect Aemon. Oh God. Now you've got me thinking about a scene where everyone's sitting there drinking like rum. I mean, it's rum, right? So someone having some rum and not thinking that like a dead body had been in it the whole time. I think at some point we want to have that, like someone being like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I'll have some rum," you know, like, God. I mean, it's a creepy thought. Like it's just at some point, like Tyrion drinking rum because he deserves it. Tyrion of all people deserves to drink some rum that had a dead body floating in it. Like, let's be honest. But can someone resurrect Aemon? You know, I mean, as a white, as like a fire white, in the same way of like as like Dany and I mean not Dany, but same way as like Lady Stoneheart. I suppose that would be a really weird. I mean, the thing is even with the resurrected people, they seem. I mean, I guess they had like Beric and Lady Stoneheart, despite looking like fucking zombies, like everybody's just like willingly like, yeah, I'm totally gonna follow this zombie. Like no one ever has a problem with it. They're like, yeah, hey guys, we're taking marching orders from like a literal zombie who's like telling us to murder people and string them up, who are only tangentially related to like to crimes. Do you think maybe we're the bad guys? You know, like no one is making that connection. Like with Dany, she comes back into Slayer's Bay and there's this like rotting Aemon lumbering around. Like she's not gonna be like, dude, that's creepy. Why should I listen to him? But then it's like, well, what are you gonna do with him anyway? Like, is there something about his blood? Is there? The thing is, did they bleed him? Did they? Because there's. So one of the big reasons why you embalm somebody, you take out their blood, is that the blood causes a lot of problems in decomposing a body. I wonder if the blood if the blood was even taken out. Can you just throw somebody in rum and have it be preserved that way? It's just kind of weird, very very weird. But what else would Marwyn do with him? Like, does he need Targaryen blood? Is he gonna burn him? steal his face. I don't know. You know, um, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things like why? Because he's also maybe he has all the dragon books too. He's got some cornucopia of useful things. Gilly, books, Aemon's corpse. Mm, mm. Should your commentary on economists be applied to historical figures? Meaning, is it essential to deep reading into them before arriving at a conclusion? I find with most historical figures is that once you kind of look into them, they're human beings. They've tend to have done a lot of good things and bad things. A lot of the times they're forced into the situations that they're forced into because of the environment, both good and bad. Like you kind of say like, oh, why did Lincoln do the Emancipation Proclamation? Was it because he was such a great guy? Well, no, I mean, he was trying to appease certain parties and stuff like that. He's a political figure. Did he, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I mean, I do think that, in general, I don't really like put too many historical figures on a pedestal because we're all human beings. I mean, it's hard to put anybody on a pedestal, we've all done a lot of bad things and good things in our lives. And, it's tough to, and considering that like how we behave is going to be atrocious to someone 300 years in the future. It's going to be seen as atrocious to someone in the future. So it's really tough. It's really tough to ever, really think about them as like heroes or something. At least for me, I don't know. Like even people like Thomas Jefferson, where you're like, oh, what a great writer who thought about all these great things, intelligent dude, so revolutionary. And then you're like, oh yeah, he was also like, raping a slave. Like, oh, like, damn it. It's so much potential, like, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I'm not one for idolizing and worshiping too many people. I mean, even the people I really like Sir Richard Francis Burton. Like I have a soft spot for Sir Richard Francis Burton, right? At the same time, like somebody explained to me like everything he did, I'm sure like I'd find something where I'd be like, ooh, that's not too good. That's not too good. I'm sure, but we'll see. Love the ecological engineering core theory. Azor didn't kill his wife with a sword. Someone destroyed a moon or wife, and it was a light-bringing weapon, misremembered in oral tradition. It's certainly possible. So the thing with George brings up oral tradition a lot in his stories, and he has his characters come to a false conclusion that, and I've seen this false conclusion in Ice and Fire as well, repeated. The idea that like, say we're taking, you've all heard this with the flood myth narrative, right? That if you go from Europe to the Middle East to India, even to the American Indians, that you will find a flood myth. And therefore, even though the details are completely different, that because they all had a flood myth narrative, there must be some truth to the fact that there was some great flood. Now, of course, scientifically, no, that's ridiculous. There was no great flood. That makes no sense. There's not enough water. Like it's like there's just that's ridiculous. Okay, but you see that logic. Now you see this repeated. Like dragons in Karth, dragons in Marine. Like the Dragon Queen is back. Well, it's true. The Dragon Queen is back. But this is a repeated kind of thing. In Night Flyers is the main one. Like, oh, the Vulcan went to this civilization and they talked about the Vulcan, and they went to this civilization and they talked about the Vulcan. So there must be some sort of truth to the narrative. These all cultures believed it was different aliens, and then in the end, like, what George does in the end is he says, no, actually, you were all wrong. You were all wrong. You had conclusion one, you had conclusion two. You were all wrong. It was something completely different. It was a non-sentient animal who used telekinesis to propel itself through space. Like, it had nothing to do. It was not any sort of ship with any animals or anything like that. It was something completely and utterly different. And that all the narratives are wrong. So when we hear like Azor Ahai, for example, like you open up the world book and it's like Azor Ahai here, Azor Ahai here, somebody who's clearly Azor Ahai. There must be some sort of truth to Azor Ahai. George tends to go, no, you're all wrong. Like there's something, but it's something completely different that you weren't thinking of, which is why, like, it was actually a moon breaking apart. It was a seed ship. All of these sorts of things, like, would be in line with George. It would be something beyond it. It's it's something that nobody is thinking of. Corn. Thank you, Leroy. Corn. What will the Andals? What will the fanfic do about the Andals in the Long Night? Sam and John have a discussion that suggests that the Andals arrived earlier, but they are interrupted. What can that be used for in the story? No, this is going to come up later on. It is, but mainly that. Look, if there's nothing written down, we have no idea what happened. Like, we have no idea when the Andals invaded. We have no idea when the wall was put up. All of these thousands of years kind of things are off. Now, keep in mind that, like, our own world, our own history has these sorts of things. Okay. When you ask a religious person about the pyramids, okay, they'll talk about how, like, oh, the Israelites, they were slaves and they were like building the pyramids and stuff. And it's like, really? Well, you're kind of off by a few thousand years, okay? Like, in that claim, okay. And this sort of stuff happens all the time, like about like when did the Adam and Abraham, and when did camels exist in the Middle East, and when did they have horses, and all these sorts of things, like domestication of animals. All these things are like completely off in these narratives, in these stories, by thousands of years. Like, people have their like off ideas about stuff. So yeah, the Andal invasion, there's something very off about it. And because, for instance, we hear about an Andal being at the wall for the Rat Cook story. And we hear about the Ironborn using iron before the Andal invasion, or iron swords being on top of the Stark tombs before the Andal invasion. There's something weird going on, and it just, in general, the whole history is screwed up, and the Maesters are hiding something, is the idea. Now, how specific and how will be outlined, I don't know, but essentially we're going to find out at some point that all history can be thrown out. That what the Maesters started writing, when they started writing things down, or the Septons, I'm sorry, because it was actually the Septons that started writing down stuff first, with the Andal invasion. That is the that's kind of the beginning of history, and everything else before it is wrong, Don't you sometimes feel that A Song of Ice and Fire, attention to detail, and incredibly well-written characters has affected how much you enjoy other stories? I do. It has actually. I was recently working on a video um, about George's writing style, and as part of it, I went back to um, the Lord of the Rings, and real quick, I want to talk about like the Lord of the Rings begins with this line. Okay, this is the first line of Lord of the Rings. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would gotta start over. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Okay, that is the first line. Now, it's not a bad line. It's not. Like you read that and you go, oh, this is, 111st birthday. That's interesting. There's a party. Like it's not a bad hook. It's not horrible, but we can kind of you kind of know that it's a little clunky, right? When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag Ends announced that he would be shortly. I can't even read it without stumbling. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would be shortly. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. It's very clunky. It's very clunky. And so you're like, huh. And there's something about it's not that there's not like a lot of detail, but I think George's writing, because George is like very smooth and economical, has made me very aware of clunky writing. Because like I joke that like, how would George R. R. Martin start Lord of the Rings? Well, George would probably start it with something like, let's see. He would probably write it like, he'd probably write it something like, the villagers whispered about the birthday. It was a rare thing for a hobbit to celebrate his 111st. It would be something like that. It would be short, to the point. Like, the strength of Tolkien there is he talks about this weird concept of the 111st birthday in a party, right? But like, and there being gossip. So like, George would make it a little more ominous. He'd be like, the villagers whispered about the birthday. It was a rare thing for a hobbit to celebrate his 111st. And you'd be like, oh, let's keep reading. And it's just like smooth, right? I looked into some other stuff too, like even like it. This is the way, and keep in mind, Stephen King is a very smooth writer, but he begins it with, the terror, which would not end for another 28 years, if it ever did end, began, so far as I know or can tell, with a boat made from a sheet of newspaper floating down a gutter, swollen with rain. Okay. There's a lot of similarities to the way George writes and Stephen King. Like that gutter, floating down a gutter, swollen with rain. That's, like that right there. But that again is like, it's longer. It's a longer, clunkier sentence. But it's a pretty good hook. Pretty good hook. It still pulls you in, because you're like, terror? What terror? Boat? Some imagery, it's poetic, J.K. Rowling, this is the way she starts Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. The two men appeared out of nowhere a few yards apart in the narrow moonlit lane. For a second they stood quite still, wands directed at each other's chests. Then, recognizing each other, they stowed their wands beneath their cloaks and started walking briskly in the same direction. Not bad. I mean, again, like, who are these men? Like, why are they hostile towards each other? But again, it's like long and clunky, George doesn't start stuff like that. The Dance with Dragons begins with, the night was rank with the smell of men. Like, it's just, that's just how it's done. So I do really appreciate the detail and things coming back and everything being used, and like every sentence having a purpose rather than just being stream of consciousness, like some stuff being written. But I think he's ruined me for especially like chapter beginnings and endings. He's ruined me for like a lot of details, and he's ruined me for how well the things flow. He's also ruined me for dialogue. His dialogue's really strong, and other people's dialogue can just be like boring. And it's like his characterization, like even though we sometimes joke that like so many characters are like Robert, haha, shoulder puncher, quick to anger, quick to anger but quick to forgive. Like that's still so much more character than some people have for anyone in an entire book. So yeah, definitely. But I mean, and these are like great writers, right? And I'm still like, oh man, that's fucking clunky way to begin a book, Stephen King. And that's like considered one of your greatest, like, George would definitely like shorten that up too, right? So, oh well, okay. Shave the evening equals tree plus corpse. Jojen paste equals tree plus corpse. Yeah, well, yes. So shade of the evening, is a direct mirror of the werewood. Okay, so the werewoods are white, and then the trees in which shade of the evening comes from. What's the name of them again? It's coming from the black barked trees. Okay, so the black barked trees from in Karth are clearly like the same but opposite to the werewood. So one's black, one's white. So the acorn paste is clearly shade of the evening. Same thing, Our character eats it right before they have like a psycho. It helps open their mind, right? It's essentially LSD or whatever. The werewood net is the same thing as the House of the Undying. All right, the House of the Undying, when you read it and listen to like watch it closely, it's a net of people whose souls are like together, like living forever. That's why it's the House of the Undying, but it's a network of warlocks who are continuing on, and they would like Dany to be part of their network because their bodies and husks are probably all dying. They need a fresh young body to like be part of the pool so that they'll continue. The werewood net, kind of the same situation. You've got this old man, Bloodraven, who's just like those old bodies in the House of the Undying, like trying to get Bran to join the net. It's remarkably the same. And there's another analogy to it, to Arya and the House of Black and White, but with her smelling the candle and everything. But it's all there. But it's very, very clearly the same thing. It's just at a different part of the world with a different mechanism. So the House of the Undying and their black barked trees and their big beating heart and old people trying to continue on in a hive-minded existence and pulling somebody in, somebody that's telepathically talented, someone on the other side of the earth, like try to pull somebody in with psychotropic drugs, like to have them pulling into their net, who's old and everything. So it's precisely the same. Dany destroys the House of the Undying. Bran will probably destroy the Cave of the Thread Crow. At least we see that happen in the show. So, yeah, it's I'm trying to think like the Jojen though. Does Jojen need to be dead? Does I guess Dany? There's no cannibalism with Dany, I suppose, but nonetheless. Do My Wells is better than anything George R. Martin has ever written. Okay. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of better writers than George R. R. Martin in the world. It's funny, and just some are just different, But oh, this is Wheel of Time. Battle of Dumai Wells is part of Wheel of Time. I'm trying to think. What book does this happen in? What book? Does this happen in the? Is it like? Crown of Swords? 7th book of Wheel of Time? Okay. Huh. How to stand out on a first date. Asking for a friend. Interesting. So I don't know if standing out is the strong strategy. So in life, whether it be work or whether it be dating or whether, the world in general, like there are times to stand out and there are times to not fuck up. You will have a job interview at some point where they are looking for reasons to disqualify you because they have so many qualified candidates that they're just looking for a reason to disqualify you. And if you do something to stand out, they're going to take that as a reason to disqualify you. And then there are other situations and other jobs where they're looking for someone to stand out. They're like, we wanted something special, and that person stood out. He was unique. So it all depends. It depends on obviously the person that you're going on a date with and such. But the thing about like a first date, I do think there's a very good line in Hitch where Will Smith says, she already likes you. That's why she's agreed to go on a date with you. Your job is to not screw it up. And I do think that's pretty good advice. Now, of course, don't be boring. You can't be boring. But like I say, like the thing about the first date is, you want to be able to connect with the person. And, you want to make the person feel relaxed, that they have some sort of emotional connection with you. And so the idea is to ask them questions and find something that like is emotional and powerful for them, and then establish that you understand or have something similar in your life to them, And I know like some people think, oh, first dates should all just be like fun and games and blah, 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 blah. But say you are on a date with someone and they mention that like, their father died, and say your father has died. Like, you saying at some point, like, yeah, I remember when my father died, like this, like I went through a similar experience and da 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 da. And yeah, you're talking about something very depressing. You're talking about like fathers dying, and you can veer away from that topic very quickly, if you don't want to make the date a downer. But I guarantee, like, mentioning if that person's father's died and your father has died, I guarantee they're going to think, oh gosh, this person understands me. Like they've been through something similar. They understand, like if they lived for a year in Germany and you lived for a year in France, like when they mention that they lived for a year in Germany and they had this and this experience, you can then mention like, oh yes, I know I lived in France and things were similar because this and this and this and this happened. And they will have in their head that, oh, this person is similar to me and there's a connection. Because they have a similar thing. And you want to really connect on emotional stuff, stuff that like really defines who they are, struggles that they had in their life, or traumatic events, both positive and negative traumatic events, and so the way to stand out is to empathize. The way to stand out is to find a very important aspect of their life and be like, you know what? That's an important part of my life too. You know? I mean, if you're on a date with somebody and somebody's talking about JC the entire time and you are also religious, mention it. You know, like obviously, like that's something for you to connect because like religion is a big part of their life. Religion is a big part of your life. You're going to connect. You know, having spent time abroad, having had a tragedy in the family, really being into, let's say the person's really into running, and you're really into like lifting. But the point is that you can find that the connection, like one takes a lot of pain, and I dedicate myself to this, and I have a lot of satisfaction after, and and then you make that connection. So I don't think it's, like don't think about it in the sense of like I've got to do something crazy. Like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Big Fish, where he the guy goes to these huge extremes in order to present himself as this extraordinary character. So you got to keep that up. But you just want to establish, like, ask questions until you find something that's important to them that you can connect with them about. And don't focus on like little things like, oh, did you watch this show? Oh, well, I watched it too. And then you can, but you want to find something, you want to find something that really defines who they were, that who they are, and really like change them. Did they go far from home? Do they have a lot of brothers and sisters, and you do too? And like, you have interesting relationships with them. Did they ever get sick? Did you ever get sick? It's got to be something. It's got to be something that's big and it's very, very important to them. Find out what's important to them. Talk to them. Ask them questions to find out what's important to them, and then think about how you understand them because something similar happened. And that's it. Like that's where you got to really connect. Because connection is the way you stand, like standing out is, like I say, emotional connection on a fundamental level. Like you got to find that connection. Maybe it's going to be something really far. Maybe it's going to be something far off. Like, the girl is super into rock climbing. You've never been rock climbing, but all she wants to do is rock climbing. You're like, and it's a huge part of her life. It's very emotional to her. You got to figure out something. You can keep asking about it, but you have to display that you understand that connection and understand the feelings that the person has. Because like I say, it's all about empathy. It's all about empathy. Right. Here we go. Hype House Homie just essentially said what I said, like really quick. Just ask questions until you get to know the person and try to find the connection. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. For so I have a theory. Cold Hands is the original Azor Ahai, the undead who can never die, doomed for all eternity to roam the north. John's fate's thoughts. The problem is that like Cold Hands has a cloak on that's like old, but like eventually clothing is going to fall apart after a certain amount of time. So Cold Hands can't be more than a few hundred years old, or else he'd be naked. His clothes would have fallen off him. So when people talk about him being like thousands of years old or being the Night King or something like that, well, he can't really be that old. But his stuff's old enough as well where he can't be like Benjen, because Benjen has only been missing for a few years, couple years. So, which is why, like, I just kind of say like the most logical explanation is that he was one of Raven's teeth, like he's just the right time period based on the clothing. Now, granted, people can change clothes. Maybe, he took one of Bloodraven's old cloaks, that was lying around because his old clothes had fallen off. But that's just kind of how I have it. That I'm just going on how the clothes looked. It's the same thing is with the situation of the dragon glass stash and how old the cloak is on that. Because it's freshly buried, but kind of an old cloak. And, how long it could be under there. Like, it's not going to be thousands of years, the thing would have rotted away, So there are those little things like how long has the dragonglass stash been in there? In the show, they have the dragonglass stash be like thousands of years old, because they find it underneath the marker for the first men or something. But it's couldn't have been there too long, Oh, surprised the Stannis Hawk story didn't leave that much impact for you. Demonstrates his ability to find worth in unlikely people, Davos, Jon, Mel, etc. I mean, I suppose in the sense. So what we're talking about is Stannis had this bird that he was that he had taken in and started that he'd taken in that he was when he was younger and then was taken care of. And then Robert made fun of him because what do they call it? Wounded Wing, he called it. What was it? What was his name? The Proud Wing story. Yeah, so this is the story. When I was a lad, I found an injured Goshawk and nursed her back to health. Proudwing, I named her. She would perch on my shoulder and flutter from room to room after me and take food from my hand, but she would not soar. Time and again, I would take her hawking, but she never flew higher than the treetops. Robert called her Weak Wing. He owned a girl falcon named Thunderclap, who never missed her strike. One day, our great uncle, Sir Harbert, told me to try a different bird. I was making a fool of myself with Proudwing, he said. And he was right. Stannis Baratheon turned away from the window, and the ghosts who moved upon the southern sea. The Seven has never brought me so much as the sparrow. It's time I tried another hawk, Davos, a red hawk. So it is an interesting story. So like this idea that, in the moment, Stannis is obviously talking about is the bird is a metaphor for his religion, that he was a follower of the faith of the Seven, and the faith of the Seven was pathetic, like this little bird, and it didn't do anything, while Robert had a powerful bird that actually did stuff for him. And so he's switching from this faith of the Seven to the religion of R'hllor. However, what Pain Causing Samurai is talking about is that there's a second level to the story. That in truth, like that's Stannis talking, but in truth, like Stannis has a second level that he never really did change as a person, and that he's always had a soft spot in his heart for cast-offs and outcasts, and that he takes in like Davos, Mel, Jon, and that he sees potential in them. And, maybe they're going to embarrass him, each time. But he still keeps believing in them for some reason and still keeps like supporting them and habilitating them. So like it's it's certainly an interesting interpretation of that. And so the question is like, is there something really kind of deep down? Is Stannis deep? Because it's so funny because the show definitely never portrayed him this way, right? But like deep down, how much of a softie is Stannis for these little broken things, and how far can he go with them? Can Proud, is Davos a little Proudwing? Can he ever soar? But I do think I've been convinced that it's a very good little story, and that Davos later on should probably realize more explicitly that he's Proudwing, and that he needs to soar for Stannis and go above and beyond what he what he had been, that he's not some sort of embarrassment. So I mean, it certainly explains like not just like Davos and Jon and Mel. It explains very well Patchface, like why Stannis is keeping around Patchface. I mean, the simple thing is like, oh, Shireen likes him, but it's like my kids like a lot of things. I don't, I wouldn't keep around Patchface, But is Stannis actually a softie? That's a question. Is Stannis a softie for Proudwing? Or it talks, the story is, in the sense that like Stannis a softie, and now he's learned to try not to be a softie. Is Theon a softie? Is Theon Proudwing? That he's going to have this like army of broken cast-offs for himself. Da, da, da. Proudwing, always felt sorry for Proudwing. Proudwing is Theon. It's Theon the whole time. It's Davos. Okay. Hey, I came to the end. Carmine never called in. Carmine was supposed to call in and he wanted to ask me one thing, but we'll see. All right. I wonder if Stannis likes plants. Huh. Stannis is a nice chap. Stannis was a softie for Shireen. Yeah, we'd it's too bad we don't hear too much of his, like in the show he was certainly a softie for Shireen. And it was and then they flip the script, and have the mother redeem herself at the end and think it was a bad idea. While Selyse was like harsh the whole story until the end where she's like, fuck, no, Shireen. And then Stannis is the one that's like loses his mind in the end. But yeah. Cripples and bastards and broken things. Yeah, I like Patchface. Nice. Well, man, now we're making Stannis seem like such a great guy. This softie, even though he killed his brother. Proudwing is Sam. Yeah, I mean, or the thing is the whole story, right? The whole story is Proudwing's. Preston, I DM'd you. What is my thing off? What's wrong here? What's wrong here? Yo, trying to join. It says waiting for a host. Let me see here. I guess I don't want to. I guess it's off. I guess for some reason it's erroring up. But so we didn't get any Carmine today because we had an error on my guests. That's too bad. Because it's here. Oh well. Carmine wants me to say bad naughty words on the stream, and for me to end. But it's too bad because Carmine wanted to call in and then talk about HBO Max. But I guess we'll have to do that on a podcast or something. But anyway. What we got? Any random questions, man? This program is called Ecamm. It's very, very easy to use. and so it's been my choice program for it, especially as a Mac user. Um, um, oh, Proud Ring was a particular type of hunting game expert. George made that a pretty tragic misunderstanding. Hmm. Oh, so here's the thing. So here's a little more on the story. So so Stannis, this is getting into more. So apparently, okay, Goshawks, the bird he was actually bringing back to health, are uh are not um big, high flying like birds. Like they actually are canopy hunters, and they're not supposed to go above the top of the treetops. And so George, either George didn't know, or Stannis is unaware that the Ghost Shock is not capable of doing those sorts of things. So he actually successfully trains a bird that's also known for being very difficult to train, and he does it actually does really well. But because of the discouragement of people around him, he couldn't actually see the true power of what he had, and that he was just he was that his brother is like mocking, ended up having this like massive a misunderstanding about the whole thing. That's pretty funny. Um, that's pretty funny. And then again, it's like, did George know this about the Ghost Shock and stuff like that? And um, I've never heard. I mean, you think you bring up something like a Ghost Shock, which, frankly, I never really heard about the Ghost Shock before. But like, um, but man, there's apparently a whole bunch of these things, and um, it's that's kind of a funny thing. I don't know. This one says that breeding range, Rocky Mountains. Um, they're found in deciduous and coniferous forests. They they hunt in heavy canopy coverage. Yeah. Everyone around him should have known. That's the thing, is like, shouldn't Davos hear the story and be like, what were you doing? What were you doing with the ghost shocks? You're right. Or Robert doesn't know about it. You'd think if all the it's pronounced Goshawk. Fine. Goshawk. Um See, this is one of those situations like, did this is, keep in mind George was writing this before, like, Wikipedia is like huge and stuff. So like he has to do all this sort of kind of research on his own. But like, so he's got to read this about the goshawk and know that it's like shouldn't go above the tree line. But then the characters, Stannis, Robert, everybody else has to like know this as well. Like, but these are like hawking cultures, so they all should know about hawks, right? Because they're all like doing hawking all the time. Um, I'm even wondering, like, but also like timeline wise, like when does this happen? Like, when does Robert go off to the Vale to be, or does he see Stannis on like winter break, summer break? He comes to visit, so he's like, Robert is going off to the Vale when he's what, like 1 year older, and he goes off to the Eyrie in well, we know that he's there in 278. So I guess he's not sent to the Vale until after he's about 16 years old. Because we know that Robert and Stannis see their father die when he comes home. So so I guess they could be, young teenagers. So I guess the timeline's fine. But man. Gosh, Hawk, damn fair. I actually just yesterday had a conversation about ketchup. So ketchup, you kind of, I don't know if you guys like know about this. There's two spellings of ketchup, like KETCHUP and then CATSUP. And both of them, like you're not supposed to say catsup. You're supposed to say ketchup. But the way we pronounce it, ketchup, we can kind of hear that TCH as one sound. Catch. It's not catch, like without the T. Like it's not like, it's like fetch. There's a T sound in there, right? Right before it. However, ketchup. However, it comes from the like this Malaysian Chinese ketchup, or ketchup. So it should just be a ch sound. So people ketchup, not ketchup, but we like invent this in English now, ketchup. But whatever. It's damp fare, goshawk. Have you guys ever had gooey? What's that? What's that gooey? What is it called? Gooey fish? Gooey. It looks like gyro or something, but like gyo. It's like, fuck. I forgot what it was. They eat it in like the Pacific Northwest. Gooey something. And it doesn't like the way it's pronounced at all. Sure. Rank the best Ridley Scott movies. Geoduck. Gooey duck. Geoduck instead of Geoduck instead of Geoduck. Gooey duck. Rank the best Ridley Scott films. All right, let's bring them up for a second. Okay. Ridley Scott films. Jeez. Some you wouldn't expect. The Duelist, Alien, Blade Runner, Legend, Someone to Watch Over Me, Black Rain, Thelma and Louise, 1492, the Browning version, White Squall, G.I. Jane, Clay Pigeons, Where the Money Is, Gladiator, Hannibal, Black Hawk Down. He did Hannibal? Jeez. Oh my God. Okay. Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, A Good Year, Assassination of Jesse James, American Gangster, Body of Lies, Robin Hood, The Grey, Prometheus, Stoker, The East, Counselor, Out of the Furnace, Exodus, Child 44, The Martian, Concussion, Morgan. Oh, these are mostly where he's like becoming producer. So I'm gonna stay with him as director. Okay. So, okay, just director. Cut out a lot of that. We can go Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, Good Year, American Gangster, Body of Lies, Robin Hood, Prometheus, Counselor, Exodus, Martian, Alien Covenant, All the Money in the World, Last Duel, House of Gucci, Napoleon, Gladiator 2. Okay, now obviously I haven't seen all of these movies, but of the ones I have seen, I think Blade Runner is a fucking absolute masterpiece. Okay, so I'm going to put Blade Runner number 1. Blade Runner number 1. I think Alien is going to be number 2, just for being revolutionary. I've seen Black Rain. Didn't impress me. I've seen Thelma and Louise. Didn't impress me. I saw 1492. That's a very impressive movie, actually. That's the one starring... no, I'm sorry. Fuck. I haven't seen 1492. I saw The New World, which was very impressive. So you know how like movies, they release like the same kind of movie the same year? Like Deep Impact comes out the same time as Armageddon, and like the volcano movies come out the same year, you know? And like there was a year where two 1492 movies, or two movies about the like early colonial America happens. And The New World comes out starring Christian Bale and the and it's The New World starring Colin Farrell and Christian Bale, and the star is this this woman. She her name is Koryanka Kilcher, and man, that movie is really quite impressive with the amount of like detail and direction and everything went to it. But now I'm talking about The New World, where I was like, wow, what a fucking crazy, unknown, fantastic movie. No one ever sees that movie. I've seen bits of G.I. Jane. I've seen Gladiator, didn't like it. I've seen bits of Hannibal, didn't like it. I've seen bits of Matchstick Men. I saw Prometheus, whatever. The thing, I haven't seen The Martian. People tell me, I guess I haven't seen enough for me to really say. Some people say The Last Duel is really fucking good. So I don't know. When I'm thinking of a movie that just like punches me in the gut, that's incredible, I'm gonna say Blade Runner's number one, and Alien number two. And what else are you gonna do? Gladiator is number one. I just don't like Russell Crowe that much. I'm also just like too much of a stickler for historical accuracy, where I'm just like, nah. Yeah, Black Hawk Down. I like Black Hawk Down a lot. Black Hawk Down is really good. But yeah. I don't know. I'd never like Blade Runner is one of those movies that changes your fucking life. And Geoduck evolves from Psyduck. You're right. I wonder, is Geoduck pronounced Gooey Duck? Is that actually like the way? Is that the pun that they're dealing with in Pokemon Go? Let me bring this up real quick. No. Psyduck. Do I not have? Oh no, that's Golduck. It's not even Gooey Duck. It's Golduck. Right there. Golduck becomes Gooey Duck. Is it Gooey Duck? It should be Golduck. But Pokemon can be they have some very clever and sometimes very dirty stuff. There is a let's see here. What's Shelder? What's Shelder become? Here we go. This poke is ridiculous because like he's clearly supposed to be a vagina. Like he's got this spike clit on top of his head. You know? Like, this is for kids. It's for kids. Why does he have a spike? Why does he have a spike clit? Right? Carmine, why isn't this your... Why did you choose Haunter when you've got Cloister with a spike clit? Like, battling. The hell is this Pokemon misinformation? Do any play any instruments? Why does Adele make such boring music that everyone loves? I play guitar, or I played guitar. I broke my finger and I can't play anymore. Broke my finger playing basketball, and I can't play can't play guitar anymore. At least I haven't really tried it, honestly. I'm just assuming that I haven't. Let's see what I can do here. I mean, I don't play very well, and I haven't played in years. But I was like, oh, my dusty guitar with dead strings is in the corner here. Let's see here. Oh. It's not so bad. I guess I could play. I could still do my power chords. Ooh, I need to tune this. I guess it's okay. I guess you don't use your pinky very much for stuff. 3, I guess. All right. Now I've discovered that I can still play. I honestly haven't picked up my guitar in 4 years since I broke my finger. Finger's been broken, 4 years. Anyway. Broken fingers heal. Yes, that's right. They sure do. They sure do. Just like Marillion's broken fingers.
I have low vision and I'm registered blind.
What is this?
My journey began by winning some...
Jeez. I had something come on there. Wow, still going to press and play guitar. All right. And this is Wonderwall. It was so out of tune and so dead that I wouldn't have you listen to me. Preston Hoops. I mean, I'm a tall guy. I'm an American man. I was forced to play basketball. Like, how can I not be? That's the weird thing about like being just being a boy in America. Like, you absorb a certain amount of like knowledge and sports skills just because you're like forced into that as just like a boy, Preston jumping from bird facts to Pokemon vaginas to live guitar. Out of tune and dead, just like Jim Morrison. It's true. Preston got all the ladies with the guitar. I don't know if anybody like, probably people just like tolerated it. It's a fun thing. In the end, you realize that like, it's like anything else. Like, you you think it's going to impress the ladies, but it doesn't. It's kind of like, and it's really in it. You're just really in it for yourself because you like it. There's the fucking great scene in the Barbie movie where all the Kens go to the beach with all the Barbies, and they're trying to play guitar to impress them, and then and it's like the big stereotype. It's the big stereotype scene where you know the boys are trying to impress the girls with their guitar skills, and then the girls try to make the boys jealous by like switching partners, and so like all the Kens are jealous of the other Kens as the Barbies go switch from one Ken to another to flirt. Um, the Preston went into wrestling in high school. Um, so you know what's funny? So I did cross country in high school, mostly. I did, and so the but there is so if a school has a large enough track program, like you know, it goes from like cross country to indoor track to track and field in the spring, you won't have crossover from wrestling to running. But if the school is too small to have an indoor track thing in the winter, or the runners usually go into wrestling, and it's an odd thing. Like, why is there so much crossover between running and wrestling? And I think it has to do with like the masochism of wrestling. Like, there's a lot of like, I have to lose weight and like screw my body up to get into a certain weight class. Masochism that's kind of crosses over from running. It's kind of interesting. It's true. Like working out, you're only getting attention from a man. Anyway, thank you, Andy Burke. You can get your movement back with physio. I don't know how that's possible. I mean, the bone is broken. There's no cartilage left in it. I've seen the X-ray of it. I mean, maybe the other joints would become like, would be like more workable or something, but I don't see how that joint is ever moving again. Like the bone like seals, right? I've broken 14 fingers. So I don't know how. Like, I mean, I would love it. I would love to be able to get the movement back. I just don't know how. For one, it's been like 4 years now, and the joint doesn't move. I don't know how it would happen, but I'm open to hearing your idea. I mean, obviously, I would love to fucking have more movement again. Um, Talking movies, have you seen the trailer for Godzilla -1? What are your thoughts? Interesting. Oh. I have not, but this is some interesting stuff. It's an actual Japanese Godzilla movie. So, after the war, Japan's economic state has been reduced to zero. Godzilla appears and plunges the country into a negative state. I'll have to watch it sometime. The Godzilla movies. Okay. I mean, I'd love to. Yeah, I get it. I'm paying attention to you, Ross. If you tell me like I left mine for years, but was slowing me down from 240 words per minute. I had a supracondylar fracture in my left arm as well. I got movement back in the same time. Um, hmm. I mean, obviously, like Well, I'll see. I will see. Because I mean, I used to be able to back when it was healing. I used to be able to like move it some, but now it's like completely frozen. So I'd be like, you know, yeah. I mean, this was the problem. Broke it playing basketball because like somebody just like swatted a basketball and it just went against my pinky. So I mean, I'll look into it and seeing if I could get more movement in. But um, my arm goes numb because I put my seatbelt on too fast one time and pulled something in my neck. You know what's funny about so that yeah, you got a pinched nerve. And I'll tell you, like once I was snowboarding and I fell backward and my head went on the hill and the on the snow. And when I got up, I couldn't lift my shoulder over my head. It didn't hurt. And then, but I couldn't lift it. And then I went to the doctor and they did x-rays and there's nothing wrong. They're just like, it's a pinched nerve. And at night, I'd get these throbbing pains here and there. And like eventually the movement came back, but it's still just like weaker, And it's been years now too. It's been like 5 years. But it's still just like a pinched nerve, like trying to get it. But yeah, I mean, you're putting hope in my heart. So I will continue um to look into it. I just it's just hard to believe when I've got like a frozen finger that I could like get it back to movement again. But I'll see. I would love it. I would love it more than anything if I could like get it back. But um uh just because I can't even like you make a fist and like you've got this like one finger going out like that, and stuff like that. So we'll see. Anyway, been on here for a while, so thank you everyone for sticking with me this long, and I will be doing my research on finger exercises, and I will talk to you and I'll update you guys next time. Um, maybe see a physiotherapist about it. Okay, but thank you, Ross, and thank you. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.